There are nights when the body lies in bed, but the mind cannot rest, when the ceiling above feels endless, and the shadows stretch across the walls like reminders of unspoken worries. Perhaps you know this feeling, the quiet ache of being human, the weight of thoughts that refuse to soften even in the silence of night. You close your eyes, but behind them, the mind races, weaving stories of what could be, what was lost, and what might never come. In those hours, peace feels like a distant shore, unreachable by any boat hidden beyond the horizon. And yet, what if the truth was far simpler? What if peace was not an arrival but a gentle way of walking? Not something promised in the far future, but a soft step taken in this very breath. Imagine if happiness were not a prize to be claimed, but the natural fragrance of a flower you have been carrying all along unnoticed, until the moment you stop rushing and lean close enough to inhale. As you listen now, I invite you not to struggle, not to force yourself into calm, but simply to allow these words to wash over you, like a stream that knows where it is going. If this message resonates with you so far, please take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you feel gently called to do so. And before we wander deeper into this journey, I invite you to leave a simple trace of your presence by writing in the comments your current time and country. It is a beautiful reminder that though we sit apart, scattered across oceans and continents, we breathe together beneath the same moon. The Buddha once said that the mind is everything what we think we become, and in the stillness of night, this truth reveals itself more clearly than ever. If the mind turns toward fear, fear expands. If the mind leans toward gratitude, gratitude blossoms. That is why the first moments of waking and the final moments before sleep are so powerful, for they are like gateways, tender thresholds where the seeds we plant quickly take root. Imagine your mind upon waking as a wide field of untouched snow, pristine, and awaiting the first footprints. What you choose to step into that snow with will shape the entire path that follows. If the first imprint is worry, the rest of the day will follow its cold direction. If the first imprint is wonder, then wonder carries you forward. There is an old Zen tradition that in the morning, as the monastery bell rings, the monks bow before they rise. Not out of duty, but out of recognition. Recognition that this breath, this heartbeat, this fragile chance to awaken again is already the greatest of gifts. Marcus Aurelius, though born centuries and cultures apart, echoed the same when he reminded himself upon opening his eyes, "You are alive." That is the miracle. Between emperor and monk, between the Stoic and the Buddhist sage, the thread is the same. Begin not with complaint, but with reverence. Tomorrow morning, when your eyelids first flutter open, resist the hand that reaches toward the glowing screen. Resist the mind that wants to scroll through the demands of others before it has honored itself. Instead, breathe and whisper silently within, "I am alive, I am here, and I can choose how I walk this day." Do not underestimate the tenderness of this moment, for science tells us that in the first minutes after waking, the brain is softened, its soil ready for planting, more receptive than at any other time. The thoughts you choose in that fragile interval ripple outward, shaping mood, perception, and resilience. The Buddha compared the mind to a garden. What you sow with intention will bloom with persistence. And so, in the simple act of pausing and affirming your presence, you sow seeds of clarity, and clarity is the foundation from which happiness arises. Perhaps you worry that such a habit is too small to matter, that one silent breath cannot possibly change the course of a storming day. But imagine a single candle placed in a darkened room. The flame does not banish every shadow, yet it changes the entire atmosphere. It offers orientation, comfort, and direction. So too, with the first thoughts of morning, one candle at dawn, and the rest of the day carries a trace of its light. In the monastery, they tell of a novice who once asked his teacher, "Master, what is the first practice of awakening?" The teacher did not speak. He simply opened the shutters of the small meditation hall, allowing the morning sun to pour in, warming the wooden floor. The novice understood then that the first practice is not a complex philosophy, but the simple act of recognizing life as it appears, greeting the new day as the sun greets the earth. This is what it means to awaken, not just physically, but spiritually, to bow not only with the body, but with the mind. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, let yourself imagine this ritual of awakening. Picture yourself rising not into worry, but into a quiet reverence. Imagine the feeling of your breath steady and deep, the calmness of your thoughts anchored in gratitude. In this gentle vision, you are training your mind even before the dawn comes, rehearsing a different way of stepping into life. And when the morning does arrive, you will already know the path, for you have walked it here in the sanctuary of your imagination. Every practice begins with intention, and every transformation begins with remembering. It is easy to forget, easy to be pulled once again by the noise of the world, by the endless lists and the restless demands. That is why we return again and again to the simplest of truths: you are alive, and that is enough. Tomorrow may hold difficulty, uncertainty, even sorrow, but it also holds the possibility of wonder. The first moment of wakefulness is an invitation to choose which you will water. So let us breathe together now, slowly, deeply, as though we are already in the dawn. Inhale with awareness. Feel the chest rise like the opening of a door. Exhale with release, as though laying down a burden. Whisper silently to yourself, "I am alive. I am here. I can choose how to walk this day." This is not a demand, not an order, but a gift you give yourself. A soft promise, a candle flame in the darkness, and as you allow these words to settle, notice how even now the body feels a little lighter, the heart a little softer, the mind a little clearer. You are not rushing, you are not forcing, you are simply allowing. This is the beginning, the gentle unfolding of a journey that will carry us through practices of gratitude, compassion, stillness, and wisdom. But for now, let this truth take root within you. Peace does not wait at the end of the path, it breathes with you here in this moment. When the morning opens before you like an unwritten page, it is not only the body that awakens, but the entire landscape of your inner being. The first breath you take upon opening your eyes is not merely oxygen filling the lungs. It is the tender renewal of life itself, the silent announcement that once again you have been given the immeasurable gift of existence. In that sacred interval between sleep and motion, the mind is still pliable, the heart still uncluttered, the spirit still close to the mystery from which it rises. The Buddha compared such moments to freshly tilled soil, soft enough for even the smallest seed to sink deep, and what you choose to plant there will inevitably shape the harvest of your day. It is tempting, almost automatic, to reach for the glowing device that hums with the voices of the world, to let the opinions and demands of others rush into your consciousness before you have even stood upon your own 2 feet. But each time you do this, you allow your garden to be sown by strangers, and the flowers that bloom will not always be those that nourish you. Instead, imagine resisting this reflex. Imagine turning not outward, but inward, listening first to the quiet rhythm of your breath, noticing the heartbeat that has carried you through another night. In this pause, you whisper inwardly, "I am alive, I am here, I am free to choose how I will walk this day." Marcus Aurelius, though emperor of a vast empire, reminded himself of this same truth each morning, for he knew that power, wealth, and reputation are fragile illusions, if not rooted in gratitude for the simple fact of being. When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to breathe, to think, to love, to be. He wrote, echoing almost word for word, the reverence that Buddhist monks embody when they bow before dawn, not to any deity, but to life itself. What is remarkable is that across centuries and cultures, wisdom returns to the same foundation, the awareness that being alive is the first miracle, the root from which all other blessings grow. In Zen monasteries, there is a ritual known as the morning bell. Before the sun rises, the temple bell is struck slowly, each vibration rolling across the stillness of the valley, awakening both monks and mountains. The sound is not a command, but an invitation, reminding all who hear it that this day too is a chance to return to presence. The bell does not say hurry, nor does it say achieve. It simply says awaken. And in this way the monks learn that to wake fully is not only to open the eyes, but to open the heart, to step into the day, not as a soldier marching toward battle, but as a traveler stepping barefoot into dew-kissed grass. You might wonder why these small gestures matter, why it is worth whispering to yourself a few words of gratitude or pausing before reaching for the phone. But modern science now confirms what ancient sages intuited: in the first 5 minutes after waking, the brain enters a unique state of heightened plasticity where impressions sink deeply and patterns form swiftly. To worry in those minutes is to cultivate worry for the day. To breathe with reverence is to cultivate peace. Each morning, you are in truth programming the instrument of your own consciousness, and though the ritual is silent, its impact is immense. The Buddha often taught that the mind precedes all things, that the world, as we experience it, is painted first upon the canvas of thought. If anger is painted, the world appears hostile. If kindness is painted, the world becomes gentle. The first stroke upon this canvas is drawn when the day is still young, when your body is still stretching itself, awake when your eyes are still heavy with dreams. That stroke, though light, sets the tone for all that follows. To begin with clarity is to carry a lamp along a dark road. To begin with agitation is to stumble before the journey has even truly begun. Consider the parable of the two monks walking in silence at dawn. One monk carried in his heart the bitterness of an unresolved quarrel from the night before. The other carried only the quiet joy of hearing the morning birds. Though they walked the same path, passed the same trees, and breathed the same air, their experiences were entirely different. For the first monk, every step was heavy, every sound sharp, every sight colored by unrest. For the second, every step was light, every sound harmonious, every sight luminous. The world had not changed. Only the seed they planted at waking had differed. You too are offered this choice with every sunrise. Will you open your eyes into complaint, into longing for what is absent, into dread of what lies ahead? Or will you open them into gratitude, into reverence, into quiet wonder that this day has come at all? One path leads to heaviness, the other to lightness, and the difference is often no more than a single thought whispered softly in the silence of your own mind. Tonight, as you rest in this flow of words, allow yourself to rehearse the ritual of tomorrow's awakening. Picture yourself lying quietly, the first light brushing against your face, your body still embraced by the warmth of sleep. Imagine your eyes opening slowly, not with urgency, but with gentleness, as though unwrapping a gift. In this fragile moment, before the world intrudes, you breathe deeply and repeat within, "I am alive, I am here, I can choose." You do not need to force joy or suppress sadness, you need only to honor presence. That simple act is itself the beginning of freedom. In the Dhammapada it is written, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts, it is made up of our thoughts." To train the mind upon waking, even for a few breaths, is to direct the current of the river before it gathers speed, to set the sail before the wind rises. Without this practice, you drift wherever the tide pulls you. With it, you begin the day with direction, even if the path ahead is uncertain. Remember that no gesture is too small when it comes from intention. Just as a single match can light a vast forest fire, a single breath of awareness can ignite a day of peace. And, like the silent monk who carried a lantern, not of electricity, but of living flame, you too can carry this small light within you. A light kindled each morning by reverence, a light that does not depend on the approval of the world, but on your own willingness to remember. So, as you prepare for rest, let this image remain with you. Tomorrow is not an accident, it is an opportunity. The first thought is a seed, the first breath, a prayer, the first step, a declaration. In honoring them, you are not adding one more task to your day, but returning to the most essential truth. Life is here waiting to be received. The morning, if we learn to touch it with mindfulness, is not a mere transition from sleep into movement. It is a holy threshold, a fragile doorway through which the spirit passes from the dream world into the world of form. Most of us hurry across this doorway without noticing, as if it were nothing more than a hallway leading to our responsibilities. But, in truth, it is a sacred altar, a place where the incense of life begins to rise anew. The Buddha taught that attention is the beginning of liberation, and nowhere is this more clear than in those tender minutes when the body stretches itself awake, and the mind has not yet been shackled by the countless narratives it will weave throughout the day. In that soft interval, the mind is open, suggestible like clay still moist, waiting for the first impression of the potter's hand. Neuroscience now confirms this ancient wisdom, revealing that in the first 5 minutes after waking, the brain slips into a unique state of heightened plasticity, a state in which patterns are easily molded and pathways easily carved. What we dwell upon in that brief window sets a current that can carry us gently towards serenity or sweep us violently into the undertow of unrest. To recognize this is to recognize our extraordinary freedom, for though we cannot choose all that the day will bring, we can choose how we stand to meet it, and that stance begins with the very first thought. Imagine a traveler setting out upon a long road. If he takes the first step to the left instead of the right, the entire journey unfolds differently. So too, with your waking mind, the direction chosen at dawn shapes the horizon you will meet at dusk. If you greet the day with resentment or complaint, you tilt yourself toward heaviness. If you greet it with gratitude, you align yourself with light. This is not superstition, nor is it shallow optimism. It is the practical recognition that the mind filters reality through the tone it establishes, and that tone is set in the fragile silence of the morning. The Zen masters spoke of this through the metaphor of dew upon the grass. At dawn, each blade holds a drop of water, glistening pure, untouched. Yet with the first breeze, with the first careless step, those drops scatter and vanish. So too is the clarity of the mind at waking, pristine, shimmering, delicate. If we trample upon it with worry, with distraction, with hurried scrolling through glowing screens, that clarity is lost before the sun has even risen. But if we bow inwardly, if we breathe and honor it, then the dew becomes like jewels, refracting the light of the day into countless colors. It is easy to underestimate such a simple ritual. After all, how can a whispered thought, barely formed, alter the weight of a lifetime? But imagine the course of a mighty river. At its source, it is no more than a trickle, a thread of water winding between stones. Yet shift its path even slightly at that beginning, and hundreds of miles downstream the river flows in an entirely different direction. So it is with the mind. To adjust the current at its source is to alter the entire unfolding of your day, perhaps even of your life. The Buddha's path was not built upon dramatic gestures, but upon the gentle repetition of simple intentional acts. Acts so ordinary They could be dismissed by anyone searching for miracles. But these acts repeated with awareness become the miracle. There is a story told in the Buddhist tradition of a monk who, upon waking each morning, would place his palms together and say softly, "This day is precious, for it will never come again." His companions sometimes teased him, saying that such words were unnecessary, that everyone knew each day would not return. But the monk only smiled, for he understood that knowing is not the same as remembering. To know something in the mind is common, but to carry it in the heart and let it shape your actions is rare. And so, by reminding himself each morning, he cultivated a tenderness toward life, a readiness to cherish even the smallest of moments, as though each one were a jewel placed into his hands for a brief instant before disappearing. In your own life, this can be as simple as lying still for a breath or two, feeling the weight of the blanket, the warmth of your body, the sound of the world stirring outside your window. Instead of racing forward, you pause and notice the stillness before motion, the silence before sound, the calm before obligation. In that pause you whisper inwardly, "I am alive, I am here, I am free to choose how I walk." These words need not be spoken aloud, for they are not meant for others. They are meant as a seed planted into your own soil. And like all seeds, they do not burst into flower immediately. They sink silently into the earth of your being, hidden from view, nourished by repetition, watered by attention, until one day you realize you are walking differently, breathing differently, living differently, and you cannot quite trace it back to any single cause other than the fact that each morning you remembered. Perhaps you have tried before and forgotten. Perhaps there were mornings when you intended to begin with awareness, but found yourself already rushing, already scrolling, already worrying. Do not let this discourage you. Forgetting is natural, remembering is the practice. Even the most seasoned monks admit that the mind wanders, that intention is lost again and again, but the power lies not in never straying, but in returning gently each time. As Marcus Aurelius himself said, "Return to yourself again and again as to a home. Do not scold yourself for forgetting. Do not measure yourself by perfection, simply return." Every return is an act of victory. Every return a step deeper into presence. And as you listen now, perhaps preparing to rest, you are already rehearsing tomorrow's return. You are already weaving into your subconscious the possibility that when the morning comes, you will pause, you will breathe, you will plant the seed. This is how transformation occurs, not through force, not through sudden leaps, but through the gentle accumulation of small sacred choices. Each one may seem insignificant, but together they form a path, and along this path, peace blooms like wildflowers, along a roadside unexpected and abundant. So tonight, as you drift further into the softness of sleep, imagine the morning as a friend who will arrive to greet you. Imagine that friend standing quietly at the doorway of your dreams, holding out their hand, offering you not demands but an invitation. When you awaken, accept their hand with gratitude, step gently into the day, and remember, the first breath is a prayer, the first thought, a seed, the first moment, an opportunity to return to yourself. In this way, you are not merely waking into another day of obligations, you are waking into the miracle of existence itself. There is a quiet power that arises when the mind is bathed in gratitude, a power so subtle that at first it feels almost invisible, and yet, like the fragrance of a flower carried on the breeze, it transforms the entire atmosphere without demanding attention. Gratitude is not the same as possession, nor is it the same as achievement. It is the shift of vision that allows you to see clearly what has always been present. The Buddha once said that a single thought of appreciation is like a lamp lit in the darkness, and though it may not remove all shadows, it changes the quality of the night. To practice gratitude is to train the heart to turn from scarcity to abundance, from complaint to reverence, from blindness to seeing. Each morning, after you have whispered your first awakening words, you may carry this practice into the next moment, allowing gratitude to become the purifying stream that clears away the dust of restless thought. Thich Nhat Hanh often reminded his students that when you awaken and place your feet upon the floor, you can silently thank the earth for holding you, thank the body for rising once again, thank the breath for its steady rhythm that carried you safely through the night. These gestures are not dramatic. They are not meant to impress anyone, for gratitude does not require witnesses. It is a secret exchange between your awareness and life itself, a soft bow before the mystery that sustains you. Imagine yourself brushing your teeth or washing your face. Ordinary actions, so simple that they rarely inspire reflection. Yet in those moments, the practice of gratitude can quietly unfold. As you move through the motions, allow your mind to name 3 things, however small, for which you are thankful. It may be the roof above your head, the warmth of the water, or the presence of someone you love. It may even be something as unassuming as the taste of clean air or the sound of birds beyond the window. What matters is not the size of the gift, but the sincerity of the heart that receives it. In doing so, you are lighting 3 candles in the darkness of the unconscious mind, 3 flames that will burn steadily throughout the day, guiding you when the world feels dim. Science, in its own language, now affirms what the sages have known for centuries, that gratitude reshapes the brain, soothing the storm of cortisol, softening the grip of anxiety, and opening the neural pathways that allow joy and resilience to flow. But long before these studies, the monks understood that gratitude was a medicine for the spirit, a balm that heals the constant craving for more, the endless hunger that leaves us weary even when surrounded by abundance. To give thanks is to remember that nothing is owed, that every breath is a gift, that even suffering carries within it the seeds of awakening. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition of a humble monk who lived in a remote village where food was scarce and the winters long. Each morning he was offered nothing more than a small bowl of rice, plain and without adornment. When others looked upon his meal, they pitied him, believing he must be deprived. But the monk would place his hands together, close his eyes and whisper, "Thank you." He ate slowly, savoring each grain as though it were a treasure. One day a traveler asked him, "How can you be grateful for so little?" The monk smiled and said, "Because I do not see little, I see enough. The rice fills my body, the gratitude fills my heart, and together they make me whole." In the modern world, we are surrounded by much more than that monk ever had, and yet we often feel emptier because our eyes have been trained to look not at what is present but at what is absent. We chase after what is missing and overlook what is already here. Gratitude is the training that reverses this blindness. Each time you pause to silently say, "Thank you," you are teaching the mind to notice, to awaken, to turn towards sufficiency instead of lack. And slowly the mind begins to rest, for it no longer runs endlessly in search of what might satisfy it. It learns instead to sit quietly and taste the fullness of what is already in its hands. Try it now, in this moment, as you listen. Close your eyes if you wish, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to call forth 3 things, simple or profound, that you can be thankful for tonight. Perhaps it is the bed that cradles you. Perhaps it is the sound of a loved one's voice you heard earlier today. Perhaps it is the stillness of this moment itself. Whatever arises, honor it with your attention. Whisper inwardly, "Thank you for this. Thank you for this. Thank you for this." Feel how the heart softens, how the breath deepens, how the body eases. Gratitude is not merely a thought, it is a vibration. And when you touch it, the entire nervous system responds as though a burden has been lifted. The Buddha once told his disciples that to practice gratitude was to guard against the poison of craving, for craving is endless, while gratitude is complete. A man who craves is never satisfied even if he holds the whole world in his hands, but a man who is grateful is already fulfilled even if he holds only a bowl of rice. This is the paradox that wisdom reveals. Fulfillment is not found in abundance of possessions, but in abundance of awareness. When you can bow to what you have, no matter how small, you begin to live in wealth far beyond gold. In the stillness of night, when sleep has not yet arrived, you can practice this too. Instead of turning the mind toward regrets or anxieties, let it wander gently through the moments of the day and collect the small jewels of gratitude that lie scattered. A smile shared, a task completed, a kindness received, even the difficulties that sharpened your patience. Gather them as one would gather flowers to place upon an altar. This silent ritual transforms the restless mind into a temple of appreciation, and in that temple peace descends naturally like incense rising without effort. Remember, gratitude does not deny suffering. It does not demand that you pretend all is well when it is not. Gratitude simply acknowledges that even within imperfection, even within pain, there are still gifts waiting to be seen. To practice gratitude is to widen the lens of vision, so that sorrow does not consume the whole picture. A storm may rage, but gratitude reminds you of the tree that still stands, the shelter that still protects, the friend who still listens, the breath that still carries you forward. So let us close this moment together in the spirit of gratitude. Breathe in, slowly filling your lungs with the air that has been offered freely. Exhale, gently releasing whatever heaviness clings. Whisper within, I am thankful for this breath. I am thankful for this life. I am thankful for this moment. Let these words be the candle you carry into the night, a candle that, though small, will change the way you walk through the darkness. And when morning comes, carry the same candle with you, lighting your first steps with appreciation, purifying your mind with reverence. In this way, every day becomes a prayer, and every breath becomes a blessing. Gratitude, when practiced, not as a fleeting thought, but as a way of seeing, becomes more than an exercise. It becomes a lens through which the entire world is softened and transformed. It is not that life suddenly removes its hardships or that sorrow ceases to exist, but rather that gratitude allows you to carry hardship with more grace and to see within sorrow the threads of meaning that might otherwise remain hidden. The heart that practices gratitude daily becomes like a vessel carved wide enough to hold both joy and grief. Without breaking, a vessel that understands that every experience, whether sweet or bitter, can be part of the nourishment of the soul. There is a gentle teaching from Thich Nhat Hanh in which he says, "It is not joy that makes us grateful, it is gratitude that makes us joyful." This simple inversion changes everything, for we often wait for joy to arise before offering thanks. But if we begin with thanks, joy naturally follows. Gratitude is not the effect, it is the cause. It is the spark that ignites warmth, the seed that blossoms into happiness, the doorway through which contentment enters. When you awaken in the morning and name silently the small blessings around you, you are already weaving joy into your day, not as a luxury to be earned, but as a birthright to be remembered. The story is told of a wandering monk who once came to a village suffering through famine. The people were gaunt and weary, their eyes filled with despair, for their harvests had failed and their bellies were empty. The monk, though no richer than they, carried within him a practice. Each day he would sit in the square, close his eyes, and whisper his gratitude aloud. Not for grand feasts or fine clothing, but for the sun that still rose, for the breath that still moved in his chest, for the companionship of others who shared the burden of survival. At first the villagers scoffed, wondering how a man could give thanks when hunger gnawed at his bones. But over time they noticed that his spirit did not break, his steps did not falter, and his smile remained gentle. Slowly they began to sit with him, to name their own small blessings, and though the famine did not end immediately, the heaviness in their hearts lifted. They found resilience, and from that resilience, they found creative ways to endure. Gratitude did not feed their stomachs, but it nourished their courage, and that nourishment carried them through the long winter until the earth blossomed again. This story reminds us that gratitude is not dependent upon abundance. It is often most powerful when abundance is absent. It does not require that life be perfect. It only requires that we notice what is still present. Even in moments of loss, there remains something that can be cherished: the memory of love, the lessons of difficulty, the breath that keeps us alive long enough to heal. Gratitude turns the gaze from what has been taken to what still remains, and in doing so, it restores the spirit's ability to stand upright. In your own life, you may find this practice most healing when you feel most empty. On days when disappointment or grief press heavily upon you, try pausing to ask yourself, what even now can I be grateful for? Perhaps it is not a grand answer. Perhaps it is as simple as the warmth of the tea in your hand, the kindness of a stranger's smile, or the way the sky still turns to shades of gold at sunset, regardless of human sorrow. These small things are not insignificant. They are reminders that life continues to offer beauty even when we are weary. Gratitude trains the heart to lean toward that beauty, to rest upon it, to let it hold us when all else feels fragile. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we cling to what we do not have, when we resist what is, when we allow desire to drag us endlessly forward. Gratitude is the antidote to this clinging, for in giving thanks, we release the grip of craving and settle into enoughness. A grateful mind is content, not because life has delivered everything it wants, but because it has learned to see the value in what is already here. And from that contentment comes freedom, freedom from comparison, freedom from endless grasping, freedom from the illusion that happiness lies somewhere else at some later time in some other possession. There is a Zen parable of a master who poured tea into his student's cup until it overflowed, spilling onto the table. The student exclaimed, "Master, the cup is full." The master replied, "Yes, and so is your life. Yet you do not see it, so you suffer thirst even while drowning in abundance." Gratitude is the art of noticing that your cup, though perhaps not overflowing with riches, already contains more than enough to sustain you. To drink from it with awareness is to quench the thirst of longing, to taste fulfillment in the very act of being alive. As you lie now in stillness, perhaps preparing for sleep, allow yourself to look back gently upon the day that has passed. Do not focus on what went wrong or what was lacking, but instead gather the quiet treasures that were present. Recall a moment of laughter, however brief. Recall the food that nourished you, however simple. Recall the breath that never abandoned you, steady and faithful. Place each of these memories like stones upon the altar of your mind, building a foundation of gratitude upon which rest can be supported. In this way, even if the day felt heavy, you will carry into the night a softness that lightens the heart. And tomorrow, when you rise, you can begin again, for gratitude is not a task to be completed, but a rhythm to be practiced. Each day offers new blessings, and each day offers new chances to notice them. Some days it will come easily, flowing like water. Other days it will feel forced, like pulling stones from the earth. Do not let this discourage you. Even forced gratitude, repeated with intention, begins to shift the soil of the mind. Over time, the practice becomes natural, effortless, like breathing. And when gratitude becomes the air you breathe, life itself transforms. So remember, this gratitude is not a denial of pain, it is a recognition of wholeness. It does not erase suffering, but it places suffering in a larger frame where beauty and goodness can still be seen. In the silence of your heart, let this truth settle. Breathe deeply and whisper to yourself, thank you for this breath, thank you for this life, thank you for this moment. Feel the words not as thoughts but as vibrations resonating through your body like the sound of a temple bell. Let them echo softly as you drift toward rest, carrying you into the night with a lighter spirit, a softer gaze, a heart that knows the power of appreciation. When the body begins to move after the stillness of morning, when the feet touch the earth and carry you into the rhythm of the day, there is an opportunity to transform the most ordinary act into the most sacred of practices. Walking, something so common that it rarely draws a second thought, can become a meditation, a prayer, a way of returning to yourself with every step. The Buddha himself often taught his disciples to practice mindful walking, to let each footfall be an anchor into the present moment, to feel the ground rise to meet them as though the earth were embracing their weight with tenderness. He would remind them that we do not walk merely to reach a destination, we walk to touch life with each step. Imagine for a moment how you usually walk. Perhaps hurried, distracted, lost in thoughts of where you must arrive or what awaits you when you get there. The body moves forward, but the mind races elsewhere, and in this disconnection, the richness of life slips past unnoticed. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Walk as though someone were watching you," but he did not mean a stranger's eyes, he meant your own soul. When you walk as though your soul were bearing witness, you begin to move with dignity, with presence, with reverence for the ground beneath you. In this way, each step becomes not a means to an end, but an end in itself, a moment fully lived. Thich Nhat Hanh described mindful walking as the miracle of being able to touch the earth with joy. He would guide his students to take slow, deliberate steps, breathing in and saying silently, "I have arrived," breathing out and whispering within, "I am home." For in truth, home is not a house, not a distant place, but the simple act of dwelling fully in the here and now. When you walk this way, you are no longer chasing after the future or dwelling in the past. You are arriving step by step into the only place life truly happens, this moment. Try to imagine it now, your body moving slowly, unhurried, as though time itself had softened. Each step pressing gently into the ground, each breath rising and falling in harmony with your pace. You do not need a forest path or a temple garden. Even the narrow hallway of your home can become a sacred corridor if walked with awareness. With each step you silently repeat a word to yourself. Present, here, now. As your heel meets the earth, you say, present. As your foot rolls forward, you say, here. As your toes lift again, you say, now. In this way, the rhythm of the body becomes a mantra, carrying you into stillness even as you move. There is an ancient Zen saying, "The miracle is not to walk on water or in the air, but to walk on earth." To truly feel the solidity of the ground beneath you, to recognize the intimacy of that contact, is to realize that life has been holding you gently all along. Each step becomes a bow, an act of gratitude, a reminder that you are supported. And when the mind is restless, when worries swirl like storm clouds, this practice becomes a way to descend from the storm into the solidity of the present. For the body knows something the mind forgets: it is here, not in the past, not in the imagined future, but here. Neuroscience has discovered that walking, particularly slow, attentive walking, connects the two hemispheres of the brain, creating bridges of communication that soothe the restless chatter of thought. The ancients knew this without needing laboratories or studies, for they experienced it directly, that to walk in silence is to quiet the mind, to ease the heart, to awaken creativity. The Stoics walked to observe without judgment. The Buddhists walked to arrive without striving. And both discovered that in the simple act of placing one foot in front of the other, the burden of existence becomes lighter. There is a story told of a monk who was asked by a traveler, "What do you do in your monastery each day?" The monk replied, We walk, we eat, we sit, and we sleep. The traveler laughed and said, "But everyone does that." The monk smiled gently and answered, "Yes, but when we walk, we know we are walking. When we eat, we know we are eating. When we sit, we know we are sitting. When we sleep, we know we are sleeping." That is the difference. The traveler was silent, for he understood that the monk had pointed to the essence of mindfulness not in doing extraordinary things, but in doing ordinary things with extraordinary awareness. Tonight, as you rest, you can rehearse this practice in your imagination. Picture yourself walking slowly along a quiet path. The air is gentle, the ground cool beneath your feet, the sound of your steps soft like the heartbeat of the earth. You are not rushing anywhere, you are not compelled to arrive. You are simply walking, simply breathing, simply being. With each step you release a little more of the weight you have carried, the weight of worries, the weight of regrets, the weight of endless striving. With each breath, you feel lighter, freer, more at home. This practice does not require hours, only a few moments each day. Even 3 minutes of walking with awareness can shift the current of your mind. It is not the duration, but the quality that matters. The next time you find yourself walking from one room to another, from your car to a doorway, from your desk to a window, let those steps be conscious. Let them be your prayer, your meditation, your way of bowing to the earth and to your own life. And remember, walking meditation is not about perfection. Your mind will wander, your steps may quicken, your attention may drift. When this happens, simply return. Bring yourself back to the ground beneath you, back to the breath within you, back to the words, present, here, now. Each return is a victory. Each return a reminder that you have the power to come home to yourself again and again. The more you practice, the more you will discover that the act of walking itself becomes an anchor. Whenever storms arise within you, you will know that peace is only a few steps away, waiting for you in the rhythm of your feet. Whenever anxiety swells, you will know that you can return to the ground, to the breath, to the present. The practice will become a refuge, a temple you carry with you wherever you go. So, as you close your eyes tonight, let this image linger in your heart, you walking slowly, gently, with presence. Each step an arrival, each step a homecoming, each step a prayer of gratitude. The world may rush, the world may shout, but you walk in silence, you walk in peace, you walk in the miracle of being alive. There is something deeply healing in the act of slowing down, in allowing your steps to move at the pace of the earth instead of the hurried rhythm of the world. In our modern lives, we often walk as if chased, propelled by invisible deadlines, absorbed in thought, disconnected from the ground beneath us. Yet if you have ever watched a monk walk slowly through a temple garden, or an elderly person moving with deliberate care across a courtyard, you will recognize that within their unhurried movement lies a profound dignity, a silent wisdom that speaks without words. It is as though they understand something we have forgotten, that life is not a race to be won, but a path to be touched with reverence. In Zen monasteries, walking meditation is practiced not only in the open air, but often in circles within a meditation hall. The monks walk so slowly that their robes barely stir, their eyes lowered, their attention focused wholly on each step. At first, to an observer, it may seem meaningless, even tedious, but gradually, as you attune yourself to their rhythm, you sense the depth of their practice. Each step is complete in itself, each movement free of haste, each breath harmonized with the simple act of being here. They are not walking to arrive somewhere. They are walking to arrive in themselves. This is the essence of contemplative walking, not to escape from life, but to step directly into it, to meet it without distraction, to recognize that the miracle is not somewhere else, but beneath your very feet. Thich Nhat Hanh often said, "Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet." Can you imagine moving in such a way that every step is an act of love, every contact with the ground, an intimate embrace? What kind of world would unfold if we all carried such gentleness into our steps? When the mind is burdened with rumination, when it circles endlessly around worries and regrets, walking meditation offers release. To walk slowly and silently is to give the mind permission to rest, for the body leads the way. As your foot lifts, the thought loosens. As your foot falls, the worry softens. The cycle of motion mirrors the cycle of breath, and together they create a rhythm that dissolves the tightness of thought. Science affirms that walking, especially mindful walking, reduces overthinking by engaging both hemispheres of the brain. But long before science spoke, the monks had discovered this truth within their own bodies. They knew that a step taken in awareness is a step out of the prison of endless thought. There is an old story of a disciple who complained to his master, "My mind is restless. I cannot stop thinking, even when I sit in meditation." The master smiled and said, "Then stop sitting. Go outside and walk." The disciple looked confused. "How will walking still my mind?" the master replied. "Because when you walk with awareness, your body will carry you where your mind cannot." The disciple obeyed, and though at first his thoughts continued to swirl with each deliberate step, they grew quieter until at last he realized he was not thinking of the past or the future. He was simply walking, and for the first time in many days he was at peace. You too can discover this. The next time you find yourself caught in the web of rumination, the next time you feel thoughts spinning like leaves in a storm, step outside if you can, or even into a quiet hallway, and begin to walk slowly. Let the body move like water, unhurried and gentle. With each step, bring your mind to the present moment by silently repeating, "Here, now," arriving. Feel the ground rise to meet you. Feel the stability of the earth beneath you. Feel the way your breath joins your steps like an old friend walking beside you. Soon you will notice that the storm begins to soften, not because you forced it to end, but because you stepped out of it one footfall at a time. Walking meditation also teaches us about pace, about aligning our inner speed with the natural speed of life. Often the body races ahead, while the mind lingers behind, or the mind runs forward, while the body remains still, creating a dissonance that exhausts us without reason. But when you walk slowly with presence, body and mind reunite. The fragments of yourself come together, and you feel whole again. This wholeness is not a philosophical idea. It is a lived experience, a sensation of integration, as though all parts of you have come home to the same house. In a garden, every step becomes an opportunity to notice the curve of a leaf, the scent of soil, the play of light upon stone. When you slow down, the world reveals itself in detail, in richness, in beauty that rushing blinds you to. The Zen masters taught that enlightenment is not somewhere else, it is here, hidden in the ordinary, waiting to be seen. But to see it, you must slow enough to notice. Walking meditation is the art of noticing, of allowing the world to unveil itself step by step. Tonight, as you rest, you can journey into this practice with the imagination. Picture yourself in a quiet garden, perhaps one you have known or one your heart creates now. The air is cool, scented with blossoms, the ground soft beneath your feet. You begin to walk slowly, deliberately, your breath deep and steady. With each step, the garden seems to expand, revealing more details, the gentle sway of a branch, the shimmer of dew upon a flower, the distant song of a bird greeting the evening. Time itself seems to pause, and in that pause, you feel utterly present, utterly alive. Let yourself walk in this garden in your mind until you feel the heaviness of thought slip away. Let the rhythm of your steps lull you into stillness. There is nowhere to reach nothing, to achieve only this step and then this step and then this one. Each is complete, each is perfect, each is enough. The truth is that walking meditation is not about the feet at all. It is about the heart. The feet merely carry you into the present, but the heart is the one that truly arrives. When the heart arrives, gratitude flows, peace blossoms, and you begin to see that the world has always been waiting to welcome you back. So carry this practice with you, not only in gardens or temples, but in every path you walk. Whether across the floor of your home, down a crowded street, or along a forest trail, each step can be a homecoming, each step can be a prayer. And as you learn to walk in this way, you may discover that life itself becomes lighter, that the burdens you carry seem less heavy for you, are no longer rushing through them. You are walking with them gently, step by step with presence. When emotions rise like storms, when the mind becomes heavy with fear, anger, or sorrow, our first instinct is often to wrestle with them in thought, to reason with them, to analyze them, to build arguments in the hope that clarity will arrive, and the weight will lift. Yet so often the more we analyze, the more entangled we become, as if each attempt to untie the knot only tightens it further. The Buddha, and later teachers like Pema Chodron, have reminded us that the path to peace does not lie in fighting the mind with more mind. Instead, the body can become our doorway, the quiet and reliable companion that knows how to return us to balance when the storms within grow too fierce. Think for a moment of a tree in the midst of strong winds. Its branches whip and bend, its leaves scatter, and it seems almost at the mercy of the storm. Yet, deep beneath the surface, the roots remain still anchored in the dark soil, unmoved by the chaos above. Our emotions are like the branches, restless and wild, while our body, when approached with awareness, can be like the roots grounding us in the earth of presence. To regulate emotions, then, is not to silence them with force, but to remember our roots, to drop attention from the whirlwind of thought into the stillness of the body. Pema Chodron once shared a simple but profound practice. When a strong emotion arises, do not name it, do not dissect it, simply feel it in the body. Notice where it lives, perhaps in the chest, as tightness in the throat, as pressure in the stomach, as heaviness. Instead of pushing it away or drawing it closer, breathe with it. Give it space, allow it to come and go like a wave. For emotions, when left unresisted, have the nature of impermanence. They arise, swell, and dissolve. But when we cling to them with thought, when we replay the story that fuels them, we invite them to remain. By shifting into the body, by feeling rather than thinking, we step out of the cycle that keeps them alive. There are small rituals you can carry, rituals so subtle that no one else will notice, yet within you they create a revolution. One such practice is to place your bare feet upon the ground, to cross your hands gently over your chest, to breathe slowly and deeply, 3 times inhaling through the nose, exhaling softly through the mouth. As you do, whisper silently, "I do not need to understand. I only need to be present." These words dissolve the compulsive need to analyze, replacing it with the simple recognition of being. Your nervous system, often locked in the grip of fight or flight, begins to soften. Your body begins to remember safety. Your mind begins to release its urgency. Imagine doing this in the midst of a difficult day, perhaps after a conversation that stirs anger, or in the middle of a moment that overwhelms you with sadness. Instead of letting the wave carry you into reactivity, you pause, place your hands upon your chest, breathe and whisper within. This pause does not erase the situation, but it changes your relationship to it. You are no longer swept entirely into the storm. You have anchored yourself in the stillness of the body. And from that stillness, you may respond with more clarity, or you may simply wait until the wave passes. In either case, you have remembered that you are not the storm, you are the sky that holds it. Science now echoes this wisdom. The nervous system, when guided through intentional breath and gentle touch, shifts from the agitation of survival mode into the calm of restoration. This shift cannot always be commanded by thought alone, but through the body it can be invited. Every deep breath tells the body, "You are safe." Every grounding gesture tells the mind, "You can release." In this way, the body becomes not only a vessel, but also a teacher, reminding us of truths the intellect often forgets. Consider the story of a monk who once asked his teacher how to handle anger. The teacher took him to a river and pointed to the water. "Do you see how the surface is stirred by the wind?" he asked. The monk nodded. "And do you see how beneath the water is still?" The monk nodded again. So too with the mind. When anger arises, do not try to still the surface, for the wind will always blow. Instead, sink beneath to the depth where silence already lives. There, the anger loses its hold. The monk understood then that peace is not found by conquering the waves, but by remembering the depth. You may practice this even now, lying in stillness as you listen. Notice your breath, perhaps shallow at first, perhaps restless. Without judgment, invite it to deepen slowly like a tide returning to shore. Feel your chest rise, feel it fall. Notice the weight of your body against the bed, the support of the ground beneath you. Bring one hand to rest gently over your heart, the other upon your abdomen, and breathe so that both hands rise and fall together. Whisper silently, "I am here. I am present. I am safe." Feel how, with each repetition, the body softens the heart, steadies the mind, quiets. This is not an escape. It is a return, a remembering of your own rootedness. When emotions come again, as they surely will, for to feel is to be human, you need not fear them. They are not enemies, they are visitors. Some arrive loudly, demanding attention. Some slip in softly, unnoticed, until they are heavy in the room. But each one, no matter how fierce, carries within it impermanence. To meet them through the body with breath and presence is to open the door politely, to allow them space, and to watch as they eventually depart. In doing so, you no longer live as their prisoner. You live as their host, calm and unshaken, rooted like the tree whose branches bend, but whose roots remain strong. And so, when you wake tomorrow and feel emotions stir, or when you move through the day and encounter storms, remember this: you have a doorway, always available, the doorway of the body. Step through it. Place your feet upon the earth, your hands upon your chest, breathe and whisper inwardly, "I do not need to understand. I only need to be present." With this, you return to yourself, and in returning, you rediscover peace. There comes a moment, if you are willing to notice it, when the rush of life slows enough for you to see the truth, that much of the exhaustion you carry does not come from what you are doing, but from the speed at which you insist on doing it. The body races ahead as though chased. The mind runs even faster, and soon you are no longer inhabiting the present, but are caught between what has passed and what has not yet arrived. In this dissonance, fatigue takes root, a heaviness that lingers even when little has been accomplished. The Buddha spoke gently of this when he reminded his disciples that peace is not born of completing every task, nor of bending the world to your will, but of learning to rest in the here and now without waiting for the perfect moment. We have been taught to run as though life were a competition, to measure each day by how much we have achieved, as if stillness were laziness and slowness were failure. But if you pause for just a breath, if you watch the trees swaying or the river flowing, you will see that nature itself does not rush, and yet everything is accomplished. The blossoms open when it is time, the fruit ripens when it is ready, the seasons turn without being forced. The sun does not rise because it is commanded to, it rises because that is its nature. What if we too could learn to move with such natural rhythm, to trust that life unfolds even without our frantic pushing? Marcus Aurelius once said, Do not waste the rest of your life worrying about what others are doing or chasing what is beyond your control. His words echo across centuries, aligning with the Buddha's teaching that clinging to what cannot be held is the source of suffering. When we hurry, when we demand that life move faster, when we force ourselves beyond our natural rhythm, we are clinging to illusions of control, and the result is a weariness deeper than any physical labor. To pause is not to abandon responsibility, it is to release illusion and to return to what is real, this breath, this step, this moment. Thich Nhat Hanh often guided his students to practice what he called stopping. 3 times a day, no matter where you are or what you are doing, simply stop. Stop speaking, stop moving, stop planning, breathe and notice. Notice the way the air enters and leaves your body. Notice the sensations in your chest. Notice what you are doing in that exact moment. This practice, though it lasts only 30 seconds, is like dipping a cloth in cool water on a scorching day. It refreshes it, soothes it, clears. For in those 30 seconds you step out of the frantic stream of striving and you return to the still lake of presence. Try it now. Wherever you are, allow your body to be still. Feel the weight of your limbs, the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the air against your skin. Allow the mind restless, though it may be, to rest for just this breath. Inhale slowly, exhale fully. Whisper silently within, I am here. Do nothing more. Already in that simple act, a layer of tension releases. Already you begin to remember that the present moment is not a barrier to life, but the very substance of it. The fatigue you often feel, even when you have not done much, comes from living at a pace the body and mind cannot sustain. When the body is urged to run at one speed and the mind runs at another, the nervous system enters into conflict, and you are drained not by labor but by dissonance. The cure is not more speed, not more doing, but alignment, the simple act of bringing body and mind back together in the present moment. When you pause, when you breathe, when you stop for 30 seconds, you allow this reunion to occur. And from this reunion, energy returns naturally, like a river finding its course again after being blocked. There is a story told of a young monk who was always in a hurry, eager to finish his chores, eager to advance in his studies, eager to reach enlightenment. His master, watching him one day, placed a teapot in front of him and said, "Pour the tea." The young monk hurriedly poured, and the tea spilled over, burning his hands. The master smiled and said, "You see, even tea will not enter a cup that is rushed. How then do you expect wisdom to enter a mind that never stops?" The young monk understood, and from that day on he practiced moving slowly, savoring each act, learning that peace is not found at the end of rushing but in the stillness of the sade. Present. You may notice as you hear these words that part of you resists. Perhaps a voice whispers, "But I do not have time to pause. My responsibilities demand my speed. If I slow down, I will fall behind." This is the illusion of our age, the illusion that rushing creates progress. In truth, when we hurry without awareness, we often repeat mistakes, overlook beauty, and exhaust ourselves before reaching the goal. Slowing down does not mean abandoning your duties. It means approaching them with clarity, with steadiness, with presence, so that what you do is done with care, not merely with speed. A single mindful step can carry you farther than 100 hurried ones, for it leads you not only toward a destination but also into yourself. The Buddha taught that calm is not the absence of problems but the ability to meet them without agitation. To pause, even for half a minute, is to cultivate this calm, to remind yourself that peace does not come when every task is completed or when the world is finally in order. Peace comes when you choose to step out of the rushing current and stand upon the shore, even as the river flows. In that choice you reclaim your power, you reclaim your breath, you reclaim your life. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, let us practice together. Close your eyes or let them soften. Feel your body resting. Feel the ground holding you. For the next few breaths, do nothing but breathe. Inhale deeply, exhale slowly. Say silently, I am here. Let the words settle into your being. Do not wait for perfection. Do not wait for all worries to vanish. Simply stop. In this stopping, notice how the mind begins to soften, how the body begins to release, how the heart begins to open. Carry this practice into tomorrow. 3 times a day, pause. For 30 seconds, let go of rushing. Let go of striving. Let go of the illusion that peace waits in the future. Touch it now in the present. For this is the secret. The sages have always known. Calm does not arrive when life is finally quiet. Calm arrives when you choose to be quiet within life. As you reflect upon the journey we have traveled together so far, you may begin to notice that the practices introduced awakening with intention, bathing the mind in gratitude, walking with contemplative presence, and pausing to regulate. Emotions through the body are not isolated gestures, but threads in a single tapestry. Each one is simple, almost ordinary, and yet together they weave a pattern of serenity that begins to soften the sharp edges of daily life. At first you may doubt that something so small could matter, for the mind has been trained to believe that transformation requires grand actions or sudden revelations. But the Buddha often reminded his disciples that a mountain is moved not by one great effort, but by the steady carrying of small stones. And in the same way, peace is not an event that arrives in a blaze of light. It is the quiet accumulation of mindful choices. Think of the first habit the way you awaken. It sets the tone for the day like the first note of a song. If that note is discordant, the melody that follows will be uneasy. If it is harmonious, the song flows with grace. By beginning with a whisper of presence, by greeting the miracle of existence with reverence instead of rushing into distraction, you establish harmony. Then gratitude enters, purifying the mind like clear water washing over a dusty stone. The weight of craving lessens, the heart softens, and you begin to notice beauty even in the smallest things. With each grateful thought, the world reveals a little more of its radiance. From there, the body joins the practice through walking meditation. No longer is walking a hurried transition from one place to another. It becomes a prayer, a steady rhythm that grounds you in the present. Each step is a reminder that home is not in the future, but here in the meeting of foot and earth, in the breath that carries you forward. And then comes the art of pausing, of slowing the frantic pace, of remembering that peace is not the reward at the end of tasks completed, but the companion available in every breath. When you stop even for 30 seconds, you reorient your life around presence instead of urgency. Together, these 4 habits are like the 4 corners of a foundation. Alone, each is supportive, but together they create a base upon which a temple of calm can be built. And though the temple may still be unfinished, though storms may still pass overhead, you begin to feel its strength beneath you, steadying you, reminding you that peace is not somewhere beyond the horizon, it is already blooming within. Perhaps you have noticed this in small ways. After practicing even briefly, you may find yourself less reactive to irritation, more open to moments of joy, more capable of noticing clarity where once there was only fog. These are the first blossoms of peace, delicate but real, like spring flowers pushing through the soil after a long winter. The Buddha often said that the path is walked step by step, and though the destination may seem far, the fragrance of liberation is present in every mindful step along the way. There is a story told of a farmer who was impatient for his crops to grow. Each day he would go into the fields and tug gently at the shoots, hoping to help them rise faster. But instead of helping, he weakened them, and many withered. His neighbor, seeing this, said, "Do not rush the growth. It happens in its own time. Your task is only to water, to tend to let the sun and the earth do their work. So too with the habits of peace. They do not transform you overnight, but with steady care, they grow roots deep within you. Tugging at them with impatience only creates frustration. Trust the process. Tend the soil with gentle consistency. Over time, what seemed fragile will become strong. You may wonder, why do these practices reduce anxiety? Why do they create clarity where there was once confusion? The answer lies in the way they train the mind to return to what is real. Anxiety thrives on illusions, on thoughts of what might come, on regrets of what has passed, on stories woven by fear. Clarity emerges when the mind rests in the present, in what can actually be touched, breathed, seen. Each of the 4 habits is a return. Awakening with intention returns you to the miracle of life. Gratitude returns you to sufficiency. Walking meditation returns you to the ground. Pausing returns you to stillness. And in these returns, the fog of anxiety begins to clear, revealing the calm landscape beneath. The Buddha compared the restless mind to a jar of cloudy water shaken so the dirt swirls endlessly. If you keep shaking, it will never clear. But if you set the jar down, if you allow it to rest, the dirt will settle and the water will become clear. These practices are the setting down of the jar. They do not demand that you force the dirt to sink. They simply invite rest, and clarity comes naturally. Consider how you might carry these habits into your own week. When you wake tomorrow, remember the first thought, the first breath, the first whisper of gratitude. As you move through your day, let even a short walk become a meditation, a return to presence. When emotions swell, when the pace of life overwhelms, pause, breathe, place your hands gently over your chest and anchor yourself in the body. Do not aim for perfection. Do not measure success by how long you remained mindful, but by how often you remembered to return. Each return is like a bell ringing, calling you back to yourself, calling you back to peace. And after even a few days of practice, you may notice something subtle yet profound, moments of calm appearing where once there was only tension, flashes of clarity. Where once there was confusion, a sense of spaciousness opening in places that once felt crowded with worry. These are signs that the seeds are sprouting, that the foundation is forming, that the temple of peace is already rising. Tonight, as you rest, take a moment to acknowledge these seeds within you. You may not yet see their full blossoms, but know they are there, growing silently, nourished by your intention. Place your hands gently over your heart, breathe deeply and whisper, "Peace is blooming within me." Feel the truth of those words, even if only faintly, for the very act of saying them plants the seed deeper. And so, we arrive at a threshold. The first 4 habits have begun to steady us, to soften the turbulence, to remind us that serenity is possible. But the journey continues. Ahead lie practices of compassion, of silence, of responding with wisdom, instead of reacting with impulse. Each will build upon the foundation we have laid. Each will bring us closer to the flowering of peace in its fullest form. For now, rest in the knowledge that even small steps matter, that the path is already unfolding beneath your feet, that peace is not distant but already alive within you. There is a tenderness that arises when the heart turns outward, not with judgment or comparison, but with silent compassion, a wish that others may be free from suffering and may find peace. This tenderness is not loud, it does not require recognition, it does not even require words spoken aloud. It is like incense burning quietly in a hidden corner of the temple, its fragrance drifting unseen, yet touching all who breathe it. The Buddha taught that compassion, or karuna, is not only an action, but also a state of being, an inner current of goodwill that flows naturally when we no longer live entirely absorbed in ourselves. To cultivate this compassion, even in silence, is to train the heart to widen, to remember that we are all threads in the same vast fabric of existence. When you walk through the world with this practice, you discover that compassion need not be dramatic. It does not always mean rushing to save or offering words of comfort or extending a hand that others can see. Sometimes it is simply looking at another human being and wishing them peace. Perhaps you pass a stranger on the street whose eyes seem tired, or you notice someone at work carrying a hidden burden, or you think of a loved one whose heart is restless. In these moments you can silently whisper, "May you be at peace. May you be free from suffering. May you know happiness." No one will hear, and yet in that instant something shifts within you. The mind, so often wrapped around its own stories, begins to expand. The heart, so often contracted by fear or irritation, begins to soften. Science now tells us that even thinking compassionate thoughts activates regions of the brain associated with empathy and well-being, calming the nervous system, releasing chemicals that bring ease to the body. But long before science measured such things, the monks understood it through experience. They knew that compassion heals not only the one who receives, but also the one who gives. For, in wishing well to others, you create a space of love within yourself. The act is invisible, yet its impact is profound. Imagine practicing this tomorrow. As you walk to the market, as you sit on a bus, as you move through your day, choose 3 people at random. You do not need to know them. In fact, the anonymity makes the practice purer. For each person, silently offer a blessing. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. Then let them go. You do not need to dwell, you do not need to wait for a response, you simply offer and release. This small ritual transforms every place you enter into a kind of temple. For wherever compassion is present, holiness is present. There is a story in the Buddhist tradition of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, who is said to hear the cries of all beings. The legend says that Avalokiteshvara vowed never to rest until every soul was liberated from suffering, and though the task seemed infinite, the Bodhisattva did not despair. Instead, he listened deeply to the pain of the world, and in listening, he allowed love to flow. In the same way, when we practice silent compassion, we are listening inwardly, acknowledging that suffering exists all around us, and instead of turning away, we send forth a prayer of kindness. This prayer may not solve every problem, but it changes the atmosphere of the heart, making us less harsh, more patient, more understanding. And sometimes, silent compassion is the greatest gift you can give. Words may fail, actions may be limited, but the heart's intention carries energy that others can feel even if they cannot name it. Perhaps you have experienced this, being near someone whose presence alone soothed you, though they said nothing. That is compassion radiating quietly like sunlight, warming without sound. To practice it consciously is to join in that same radiance. Try it now as you lie in stillness. Bring to mind someone you know who may be struggling. See their face gently in your imagination. Whisper within, "May you be free from suffering. May you be safe. May you be at peace." Repeat slowly with sincerity, not forcing emotion, but allowing the intention to rise naturally. Notice how, as you do this, your own body feels lighter, your own breath softer, your own heart more spacious. Compassion does not deplete you. It replenishes you, for it reconnects you to the vast network of life, reminding you that you are not alone. And when you practice compassion towards strangers, you begin to dissolve the invisible walls that separate us. The person sitting across from you on the train, the driver rushing past the woman carrying groceries, the child crying in the distance. All of them live with fears, hopes and longings, just as you do. They too are searching for peace. They too carry hidden burdens. To silently wish them well is to honor this shared humanity, to bow before the truth that we are all companions on the same road. The Buddha once said, "As a mother protects her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings." The practice of silent compassion is the beginning of this boundlessness. It stretches the heart beyond the narrow circle of me and mine, extending warmth to all beings, even those we do not know, even those we may find difficult. And though this expansion may begin small with 3 people chosen in a day, it grows. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, until compassion flows like breath, unforced, continuous, silent, yet powerful. There is also a hidden gift. When you send compassion to others, you learn to send it to yourself. Often, we are our own harshest critics, quick to condemn, slow to forgive. But as the heart softens toward others, it cannot help but soften toward the self as well. You begin to whisper inwardly, "May I too be safe. May I too be free from suffering. May I too be at peace." And in that moment, compassion completes its circle. So, tomorrow, as you move through the ordinary flow of life, remember this invisible practice. Look upon those you meet not as obstacles or strangers, but as fellow travelers. Offer them silent blessings, knowing that though they may never hear your words, the act transforms you and subtly transforms the space you share. In this way, compassion becomes not a rare act, but a way of being, a gentle current that carries you and those around you toward peace. And tonight, as you rest, let silent compassion be your lullaby. Imagine waves of kindness radiating from your heart, spreading outward into the world, touching those you love, those you know, those you will never meet. See the whole earth bathed in this quiet blessing, and whisper softly, "May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be safe. May all beings know peace." Let these words echo within you as you drift into sleep, carrying you into dreams woven with kindness. When compassion becomes part of your daily rhythm, something subtle yet unmistakable begins to shift, not only within your heart, but in the very texture of the world around you. You may not see it immediately, for compassion often works in silence, like seeds germinating underground, unseen, yet alive with movement. The Buddha taught that intention is a force as real as action, that the energy of kindness, even when not spoken aloud, travels outward, shaping both the giver and the receiver in ways too delicate to measure. To wish well for another in secret is to weave invisible threads that connect you, threads that soften the divisions created by fear and misunderstanding. In modern language, scientists speak of the insular and the neural networks of empathy, regions that glow with activity when we think of others with care. But the monks of old did not need machines to tell them this. They felt it directly in the way the body eased, when sending blessings, in the way the heart lightened, when wishing peace for another. They understood that compassion is medicine, not only for the wounded, but also for the one who offers it. It is a flame that warms both the hand that gives and the hand that receives. Consider this. How many times have you felt soothed simply by the presence of someone kind, even if they said nothing, even if they did nothing but sit beside you? There is an energy in compassion that is sensed rather than spoken, like warmth from a fire that can be felt without touching the flames. When you practice silent compassion, you become that fire for others. You may never know the effect it has. You may never see the way your unspoken blessings softened the heart of a stranger, but the world is altered nonetheless. The story of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, illustrates this truth. It is said that Avalokiteshvara listened deeply to the cries of the world, and that his vow was to respond to suffering wherever it arose. But the legends also tell of moments when his form shattered into countless pieces, overwhelmed by the immensity of pain. Seeing this, Amitabha Buddha restored him, giving him 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes so that he could reach out in all directions, seeing and helping countless beings at once. This story, like all myths, is not meant to be read literally, but as a reflection of our own potential. For each time you silently wish peace for another, each time you offer compassion without words, you are embodying Avalokiteshvara in miniature, extending invisible arms of kindness that reach further than you can imagine. And yet compassion does not always need to be grand. It can be as simple as the way you look at someone. If your gaze carries no judgment, but only gentleness, you are already practicing. If you allow a moment of patience instead of irritation, you are already blessing the world. Compassion is a practice of attention, noticing others, remembering they too carry burdens, remembering that beneath their masks and stories they are as fragile and hopeful as you. The practice of choosing 3 people each day to silently bless is one way to begin. Perhaps you see an elderly man sitting alone on a bench. You pause inwardly and think, may you feel companionship. Perhaps you pass a child hurrying to school. You whisper within, may you grow with ease and joy. Perhaps you notice someone who irritates you, someone whose words or actions feel sharp. For them you also say, may you be free from suffering, may you be at peace. And though they never know, though the world carries on unchanged on the surface, something has already shifted in the unseen realm of the heart. The Buddha once said, hatred is never overcome by hatred. Only by love is hatred overcome. Silent compassion is the embodiment of this truth. For even when you cannot act, even when you cannot speak, even when you feel powerless in the face of the world's suffering, you can still offer love inwardly. And in that offering, hatred loses its grip, at least within you. Slowly, this softens the collective atmosphere for peace. In one heart, ripples outward, like circles in a pond touching shores unseen. There is a parable of a master who told his students to imagine the world as filled with invisible threads of light, connecting every being. Each thought of kindness strengthens these threads, making the web more resilient. Each thought of anger weakens them, leaving the world more fragile. The students asked, but Master, can a single thought really matter in such a vast web? The master picked up a single strand of silk and stretched it between his hands. See how delicate it is, he said. Now, imagine thousands woven together. That is what holds the world. Your thought is a single thread, but without it, the web is weaker. In this way, compassion is not wasted, even when unseen. It is never wasted to wish well for another, never wasted to send love into the silence. For even if it changes nothing in the outer circumstance, it transforms you, and in transforming you, it transforms the way you meet the world. A person who carries compassion radiates calm patience and gentleness, and this radiance becomes a refuge for those around them. Try this practice tonight as you drift into rest. Call to mind someone you love, someone you feel neutral toward, and someone with whom you struggle. To each silently offer the same blessing. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be free from suffering. May you live with ease. Notice how it feels to extend kindness not only to those who bring you comfort, but also to those who challenge you. This is the true training of the heart, to expand compassion beyond preference to love, not only what pleases you, but all that exists. For only then does compassion become boundless. And if it feels difficult, remember that compassion is not about forcing yourself to feel what you do not. It is about setting the intention, planting the seed, allowing the heart to open at its own pace. Even the smallest willingness matters. Even a faint whisper of goodwill carries weight. Over time, with practice, the heart becomes accustomed to widening until what once felt impossible, wishing peace for those who hurt you, becomes natural, even liberating. As you lie in the stillness of night, Imagine yourself as a lamp in the darkness, your light not loud, not blazing, but steady and gentle. See this light radiating outward, touching all those near and far, those you know and those you do not. This is the practice of silent compassion. It requires no applause, no recognition, no visible result. And yet it is one of the most powerful forces you can cultivate, for it dissolves the illusion of separation and reminds you that in the deepest sense we are all walking the same path, yearning for the same peace. There is a kind of nourishment that comes not from words nor from action but from silence. In a world that seems to grow louder each day, where voices compete for attention and noise follows us, even into the spaces we once called private, silence can feel foreign, almost uncomfortable, as though it were an absence. But the sages of old knew that silence is not emptiness. Silence is fullness. Silence is the presence that exists beneath all sound, the still river that continues to flow beneath the churning waves. When you sit quietly and allow yourself to be embraced by it, silence becomes not something you endure, but something you drink, and from it you discover a deeper kind of rest. The Buddha often retreated into silence, not only in long periods of meditation, but also in the gentle pauses between words. It is said that sometimes when asked a question, he remained silent, and in that silence his disciples found more wisdom than they could have found in explanations. For silence allows space, and in that space the mind settles, the heart opens, and the truth reveals itself naturally. To be still and quiet is not to withdraw from life, but to tune into its subtler frequencies, to hear what is always present but drowned out by the noise of constant doing. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," and he knew that constant chatter, constant distraction, stains the soul with restlessness. Silence, then, is a cleansing, a return to the natural state of the mind. Thich Nhat Hanh echoed this truth when he said, "Silence is essential." We need silence just as much as we need air, just as much as plants need light. If our minds are crowded with words and thoughts, there is no space for us. To create silence, even for a few minutes a day, is to create space, space for healing, for clarity, for peace to enter. Imagine for a moment a candle burning in a storm. The flame flickers wildly, almost extinguished by the wind. But when the storm quiets, when stillness returns, the flame burns steady and bright. Our minds are like this. In the constant storm of information and noise, our inner flame trembles unsteady, nearly lost. But when we step into silence, when we intentionally withdraw from the winds of distraction, the flame steadies, and in its steady glow, we see clearly once more. There is a practice known as the sacred minute. It is deceptively simple. Once each day, stop completely. Turn off all distractions, the phone, the music, the chatter. Close your eyes. Breathe. For 60 seconds, do nothing but rest in silence. At first it may feel difficult, the mind fidgeting, the body restless, but soon you discover that 1 minute of true silence can bring more peace than an hour of noise. The Buddha compared such moments to clouds parting in the sky. Even briefly, the light of clarity shines through, and though the clouds may return, you now know what lies beyond them. Try it now. Close your eyes if you wish. Feel the air around you, the quiet beneath these words. Inhale deeply, exhale slowly. Let there be no need to fix, no need to solve, no need to achieve. Only silence, only presence. Let thoughts drift through like birds passing overhead. Do not chase them, do not resist them, simply watch as they move on. For in this silence you are not the thoughts, you are the sky that holds them. Notice how the body softens when you do nothing. Notice how the heart steadies when there is no demand. This is the gift of silence. It asks nothing, yet gives everything. There is a Zen story of a monk who sought enlightenment through endless study and debate. He read every scripture, engaged in every argument, filled his days with words. Yet peace eluded him. At last, weary, he wandered into the forest and sat by a quiet stream. There, listening to the sound of water flowing over stones, he realized what no book or argument had given him. The silence between the notes, he whispered, is where the music lives. And in that moment, he understood. Wisdom does not always come from speaking. It often comes from listening, not to others, but to the silence that underlies everything. In your life, silence may feel scarce, but it can be found in small pockets. The early morning before the world stirs. The moment before you respond to someone. The pause between breaths. These are doorways into stillness waiting for you to step through. Even amidst chaos, silence exists like a pearl hidden in the shell. To cultivate it, you need only to stop for a moment and listen. And though silence may feel empty, at first it soon reveals its richness. Within it, you begin to hear the subtle sounds, the hum of your breath, the rhythm of your heart, the distant song of life itself. Within it, you feel the presence of your own being, vast and unshaken. Within it, you discover that peace is not something to be chased, but something that arises when everything else is set down. Make silence your companion. Let there be a few moments each day where you retreat inward, where you create a sacred minute where you allow the mind to rest in quiet. Do not underestimate its power. Just as 2 minutes of stillness can sometimes calm the body more than an hour of music, 1 minute of silence can sometimes heal more than days of talking. It is not the length, but the depth that matters. And tonight, as you prepare to drift into sleep, you can practice entering that silence. Lie comfortably, close your eyes, and let the day fall away. Imagine yourself sitting in a temple where no words are spoken, where the only sound is the gentle rhythm of your breath. With each inhale, you feel more alive. With each exhale, you feel more free. The silence around you is not heavy, it is tender. It is holding you like a mother cradling her child. Let yourself be carried by it. Let yourself dissolve into it until all that remains is peace. When you begin to taste the richness of silence, you understand that it is not the absence of life, but the very ground upon which life moves, the invisible fabric that supports the rising and falling of every sound, every word, every action. It is not a void to be feared, but a sanctuary to be entered, for within silence lies the deepest wisdom, the wisdom that does not come from learning, but from unlearning, from releasing the need to grasp, explain, or define, and instead resting in the spaciousness of being itself. There is a Zen parable of a young monk who approached his master with impatience in his heart. He said, "I have meditated for many years, studied countless sutras, yet I still cannot grasp the meaning of enlightenment. Please, Master, teach me the truth." The master, instead of speaking, simply raised his finger to his lips and pointed toward the mountains. They sat in silence, the sound of wind moving through the pines and the call of distant birds filling the air. Hours passed without a word. At last the monk, restless, said, "But Master, when will you teach me?" The old teacher only smiled and whispered, "I have been teaching you all along." It was then that the monk felt a shift within, as if the mountains themselves had entered his body, as if the silence he had resisted was in fact the very lesson he had sought. The Buddha himself often used silence as an answer. When asked questions that could not be resolved with logic, questions about the ultimate nature of existence or what lies beyond death, he sometimes remained quiet. This was not evasion, but compassion, for he knew that some truths cannot be reduced to words, that language divides where silence unites. In silence, the mind may wander at first, but eventually it tires, and what remains is awareness, pure and unshaken, seeing without judgment, present without effort. To cultivate this silence is to return to your natural state. Imagine a pond disturbed by stones thrown into it. The ripples distort the reflection of the moon. Only when the water is still does the moon appear clearly. So it is with the mind. In the noise of constant thought and distraction, the reflection of truth is distorted. But in silence, the waters of the mind settle, and the moon of wisdom shines undisturbed. This is why the practice of pausing, even for one sacred minute, is so transformative. It allows the waters to clear, if only briefly, and in that clearing peace arises. You may find that silence is not easily accepted in the world. People grow uneasy when words fall away. They rush to fill the space, fearing the rawness of what might arise. But if you learn to welcome silence, you begin to see that it is not threatening but healing. It is like standing in an empty field under a wide sky. At first you may feel exposed, but soon you recognize the vastness as freedom. In silence, there is nothing to defend, nothing to perform, nothing to achieve. There is only presence. Consider the story of a hermit who lived alone in the forest. Travelers who passed by would often stop to ask him for wisdom, expecting grand teachings. But when they arrived, the hermit offered no speech, no instruction, only a bowl of tea shared in quiet. At first, the visitors were frustrated. They wanted guidance, explanations, philosophy, but as they sipped tea in the stillness, they began to notice the warmth of the cup in their hands, the fragrance rising with the steam, the way their breath slowed without effort. And in that unspoken lesson, they realized that wisdom is not always in the words we chase, but in the silence we resist. In your daily life, you can cultivate such moments of stillness. When you eat, let there be silence between bites, not only of sound, but of thought, so that you truly taste and truly receive the gift of nourishment. When you walk, let there be silence within, no need to plan or remember, only awareness of your steps and the ground beneath you. When you sit, turn off the endless flow of noise and simply allow yourself to be. These small silences weave together into a refuge, a home you can always return to no matter how turbulent the world becomes. And silence is not only for the times of peace, it is also for the times of conflict, for the moments when anger rises like fire in the chest, when fear floods the mind. If you can pause, if you can retreat into silence, even for 3 breaths, you will discover that the flame cools, the water settles, and what seemed overwhelming softens. Silence becomes a shield, not of resistance, but of presence, reminding you that you are not bound to react, that within you lies the freedom to choose. As night deepens, and you prepare for rest, you can invite silence to cradle you like a gentle lullaby. Lie back, close your eyes, and imagine yourself surrounded by a vast field of quiet. No urgency, no demands, only stillness. Let your breath be the only sound you follow, slow and soft. With each inhale, feel that you are breathing in the calm of the universe. With each exhale, feel that you are releasing the weight of the day. In this way, silence becomes not empty, but alive, not hollow, but whole, carrying you gently towards sleep. And as you drift, remember that silence is always available. You do not need to wait for the world to quiet down. You need only to close your eyes, take a breath, and step inward. There, beyond the chatter of thought, lies a silence vast and unbroken, the same silence that has existed since before you were born and will remain long after. To touch it is to remember who you truly are, not the roles or names, not the fears or desires, but awareness itself, timeless, steady, and free. There are moments in life when words strike us like arrows, when the actions of others sting like thorns, and our natural impulse is to react quickly, sharply, defensively. It happens in the smallest exchanges, in a casual slight from a stranger, in a misunderstanding with someone we love, in the rising tension of work or family. In these moments, the heart races, the mind burns, And before we even realize it, words leave our lips or gestures escape our bodies that later weigh upon us with regret. This is the common way of the world, where reaction rules and peace is lost. Yet the teachings of the Buddha invite us into a different rhythm, one of pause and presence, one of responding with wisdom instead of reacting with impulse, a rhythm that allows the fire of anger to cool before it consumes us. The Buddha once spoke of a man struck by an arrow. If he is struck and does nothing but curse the pain, blame the archer, and grasp at anger, he suffers doubly. He suffers from the arrow itself, and then he suffers from his reaction. But if he attends to the wound with care, breathing calmly, removing the arrow without hatred, then suffering is lessened. In life, insults and frustrations are like arrows. We cannot always stop them from being fired, but we can choose whether to add a second arrow of reaction. The first arrow we may not control, but the second is always in our hands. The Stoics too understood this. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He knew that life will bring storms, but we do not need to become storms ourselves. Between the moment of being provoked and the moment of responding, there is a sacred pause. Thich Nhat Hanh described it beautifully. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. In that choice lies our growth and our freedom. This pause is like a golden bridge. To step upon it is to walk away from slavery to impulse and toward the freedom of conscious action. There is a practice known as the golden pause. The next time someone's words ignite your anger or circumstances push against your patience, do not respond immediately. Instead, draw a slow breath deep into your belly. Feel the air expand your chest. Feel the grounding of your body against the earth. Hold the breath for just a moment, not with strain but with gentleness, and then let it out as though releasing not only air but also tension. As you breathe, move one finger subtly, perhaps the thumb against the forefinger, a small anchor to remind you that you are here, that you are free. Repeat silently, "I am not a reaction, I am a decision." When you finally respond, let it be with clarity, or let there be no response at all, for silence itself can be the most profound answer. Consider the image of a lake. When a stone is thrown into it, waves ripple across the surface. If you respond instantly, you are like those waves, disturbed and unsettled. But if you allow time, the ripples fade, the surface becomes still once more, and in that stillness the lake reflects the sky perfectly. So too does the mind reflect truth when it is calm. By waiting, by breathing, by pausing, you let the waters of the mind settle, and from that clarity, true wisdom arises. There is also the subtle poison of comparison. When you look upon others and see their success, their beauty, their fortune, the heart may tighten with envy, and you may feel diminished, as though their light casts a shadow over your worth. Yet this too is a reaction born of forgetting that each life is unique, that each being carries a song that cannot be replicated. To envy another is to betray yourself, to forget the singular gift of your own existence. When you notice comparison arising, pause, and remember, I did not come here to be like them. I came here to be fully myself. Say it gently with compassion, not with bitterness. Let the words remind you that your life is not measured against another's, but only by how deeply you embody your own truth. There is a story told of a monk who was insulted in the marketplace by a group of men who mocked his appearance and ridiculed his silence. Rather than respond with anger, the monk simply smiled and continued walking. Later, a disciple asked, "Master, did their words not hurt you?" The monk replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not take it, to whom does the gift belong?" The disciple answered, "To the one who offered it." The monk nodded. "So it is with anger. If I do not accept it, it remains with them. In this way, the monk taught that reaction is a choice, that peace is preserved when we do not pick up what is thrown at us. You too can live this way, not by suppressing emotion, but by acknowledging it with awareness. When anger rises, name it gently, this is anger. When jealousy stirs, whisper to yourself, this is jealousy. When fear floods, recognize, this is fear. By naming the emotion, you create space between yourself and it, enough space to choose wisely. You are no longer consumed by the wave. You are the shore upon which the wave breaks. And as you lie in your bed tonight, you can practice this golden pause, even in thought. If the mind begins to replay arguments or dwell on grievances, do not follow the storyline. Instead, take a deep breath, hold it softly, release it slowly, and say within, I am not a reaction, I am a decision. Imagine yourself standing in a wide open field. Around you, winds of anger, jealousy, or fear may blow, but you stand still, rooted like a great tree. The winds pass, but the tree remains steady, unbroken. In this vision, you feel the strength of your own presence, a strength that does not depend on controlling others, but on mastering your own response. Life will always bring challenges. People will speak carelessly. Circumstances will test your patience. Yet you are not bound to be tossed like a leaf in the wind. You are the wind itself, free to move as you choose. Each pause, each breath, each moment of restraint is not weakness but mastery. It is the mastery of the self, the mastery that brings peace not only to you, but to all around you. For when you respond with calm, instead of chaos, you create harmony in the world. And so, let this teaching guide you into rest tonight. With each breath, feel that you are laying down the arrows of reaction, laying down the weight of comparison, laying down the restless urge to fight and defend. In their place, feel the spaciousness of freedom, the quiet strength of one who chooses peace. Let that strength cradle you as you drift into sleep, knowing that tomorrow, when the world offers its arrows and storms, you will not need to react as before. You will pause, you will breathe, you will remember. You are not a reaction, you are a decision, and in that decision lies your freedom. There is a subtle wound that so many carry without noticing, the wound of comparison, the quiet ache that whispers, I am not enough because I am not like them. It begins early, sometimes as a child, when we see others praised for what we do not have, and it lingers into adulthood, shaping our worth by measuring it against the shadows of another's life. Epictetus once said, with stark clarity, envy is self-contempt, for in the moment you desire to be like another, you are declaring that your own being, your own essence, is somehow insufficient. But the Buddhist way invites us to pause and breathe deeply into this illusion, reminding us that each person has their own Dharma, their unique path, a river that winds in ways no other river can. To compare rivers is to forget that each finds its way to the ocean in its own time. The Buddha taught that a lotus grows only in mud, yet the mud of one pond is never the same as another. Some lotuses bloom tall and wide, others small and delicate, yet each carries the fragrance of awakening in its own form. To believe that your blossom should mirror another's is to miss the miracle of your own unfolding. In truth, the Dharma of your life is unrepeatable, and the gift you bring to this world cannot be measured against any external standard. To compare is to leave your own path and wander into the forest of illusion where nothing feels quite like home. Imagine for a moment walking through a garden. You see roses, lilies, bamboo, and moss. You do not ask the bamboo why it is not flowering like the rose, nor do you ask the moss why it does not stand tall like the bamboo. You accept each form as it is, beautiful in its expression, necessary in its role. And yet, how rarely do we extend that same compassion to ourselves? How often do we stand in front of a mirror and see only what is lacking? forgetting that our presence itself is a miracle, that our breath is enough to declare life worthy. The Zen masters often said, "When the bird sings, it does not try to sound like the river. When the river flows, it does not try to echo the mountain. Each fulfills its own way, its own Dharma, without effort, without resistance." If we truly understood this, we would stop measuring our lives against the lives of others, for what they have is their way, and what you have is yours. Freedom from comparison is not indifference, but reverence, a bowing to the sacredness of diversity, to the countless ways life expresses itself. Self-acceptance does not mean complacency. It does not mean refusing to grow or to change. It means growing from the soil of your own being, not from borrowed seeds. When a tree accepts its roots, it grows stronger, not weaker. When you accept your Dharma, your growth becomes authentic, flowing naturally from your essence. The Buddha himself said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Better than 1,000 imitations is one authentic step along your own path." There is a story of a monk who came to his master, troubled by feelings of inadequacy. "Master," he said, "I am not as eloquent as Brother Li, not as disciplined as Brother Chen, not as compassionate as Sister May. I feel I am failing my practice." The master listened then, led the monk outside and pointed to the night sky. "Do you see?" he asked. "The stars shine together, yet none steals light from another. Each simply fulfills its own brilliance. The tragedy is not that you are not like them, but that you do not see your own star." The monk wept, for in that moment he realized that to compare was to dim his own light, and to accept himself was to finally shine. Tonight, as you rest, notice if there is a voice within you that longs to be someone else, someone more beautiful, more accomplished, more wise. Smile gently at that voice as if soothing a child. Tell it softly, "I am here. My way is my way. My Dharma is mine to walk." Each breath you take is a declaration of existence, and existence itself is the rarest gift. In all the galaxies of time, there will never be another you. To deny yourself is to deny the universe, its unique expression through your being. So breathe now, deeply and slowly, and imagine yourself standing at the edge of your own river. The current is moving not too fast, not too slow, carrying you forward in its natural rhythm. You may glance at other rivers, but you do not step into them, for they are not yours to walk. Trust the flow of your own waters, even if they seem quiet, even if they seem small, for they too are headed to the vast ocean of awakening. When you rest in that trust, comparison dissolves, and what remains is freedom. The freedom to be fully, wholly, tenderly yourself. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the day that is about to unfold before you, not in the scattered way the mind usually does, leaping ahead to fears and tasks, but in a deliberate act of gentle visualization, as if you are painting a canvas with the colors of calm patience and clarity. The Stoic emperor, Marcus Aurelius, would rise each morning and remind himself that the world would not be free of obstacles, that he would meet rudeness, harsh words, and moments of struggle. Yet he did not rehearse these in order to suffer. Twice. He rehearsed them in order to be ready, so that when they came, he would not be shaken. In Buddhism, the same truth is spoken differently. What you dwell upon becomes the shape of your mind, and the shape of your mind becomes the shape of your life. To visualize is not to escape reality, but to train the soil of your awareness, so that the seeds you wish to grow may flourish when the conditions appear. When you wake in the morning before the news and the notifications flood your mind, before the concerns of yesterday return like unwelcome guests, you can close your eyes and quietly imagine yourself meeting the day with grace. See yourself walking slowly, eating mindfully, listening with patience, speaking with compassion. Feel in your body the steadiness of calm as if it were already there, waiting only to be remembered. The neuroscientists tell us that the brain responds to visualization almost as strongly as to action, that rehearsing peace can carve the same pathways as living it. But long before science confirmed this, the Buddha was teaching that what we think we become, and so, to think with clarity, to imagine with intention, is to begin already to become. Do not imagine only triumphs or perfection. That is fantasy and will leave you disappointed. Imagine instead the real difficulties of your day, the emails, the conversations, the long hours of labor, but see yourself moving through them without losing your breath, without forgetting your center. Imagine someone speaking harshly to you and see yourself pausing, breathing, answering gently or not answering at all. Imagine the traffic or the delay and see yourself resting calmly in the present moment. In this way, you prepare the heart not to resist life, but to dance with it, not to demand perfection, but to meet reality as it is with a softness that cannot be broken. There is an old story told in the monasteries of Japan about a swordsman who sought out a Zen master. He wanted to be invincible. He wanted to win every battle. The master said, "Before you draw your sword, draw the image of your calm. Before you fight, fight already in your mind, not with rage, but with clarity." The swordsman did as told, and over time he discovered that his battles grew fewer, for when one meets life with clarity, there is less to resist, less to fight. His victory was not in defeating others, but in mastering himself. So too with us, the practice of wise visualization is not about controlling outcomes, but about cultivating inner readiness, so that whether the day is heavy or light, you are not carried away. The great poet Rumi once wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul. Even the cold winter prepares the earth for spring." Visualization is like planting seeds in winter soil. You may not see the blossoms at once, but the roots are already weaving beneath the ground. When you visualize peace, you are planting roots of steadiness that will rise in their time. When you visualize compassion, you are planting roots of connection that will flower when another being needs your care. Trust this process, unseen though it may be. Perhaps tonight before sleep you can also practice. Close your eyes, let your breath slow, and imagine tomorrow. Not with worry, but with kindness. Picture yourself waking and smiling at the gift of another day. Picture yourself drinking your tea or coffee with awareness, each sip a small meditation. Picture yourself working without resentment, listening without judgment, forgiving without hesitation. Imagine yourself returning home, weary perhaps, but at peace, grateful for the simple fact of having lived another day. This gentle rehearsal plants intentions in the soil of your subconscious, where they will take root and rise without your forcing. In Buddhist practice, there is a meditation called metta, the cultivation of loving kindness, where one visualizes sending blessings of peace and happiness to oneself and to others. You imagine your own face, your own heart, and you say softly, "May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be peaceful." Then you imagine the faces of others, even those you find difficult, and you send them the same wish. This is visualization too, not fantasy, not escape, but training the heart to expand beyond its small walls. Each time you practice, you are carving pathways of compassion that make it easier to live that compassion in waking life. And so when you feel yourself anxious, uncertain, or overwhelmed, remember that you are not powerless. You can sit, close your eyes, and rehearse a different way of being. You can imagine yourself calm in the storm, steady in the noise, soft in the hardness of the world. This is not self-deception, but self-liberation. For the truth is, as the Buddha taught, that the mind creates the world. If your mind rehearses fear, the world appears fearful. If your mind rehearses peace, the world appears more gentle. And while the world outside may not change the way you walk through, it transforms everything. As you rest tonight, breathe deeply and imagine yourself surrounded by light, a soft, golden glow that does not shield you from life, but embraces you within it. With each inhale, see the light growing stronger within your chest. With each exhale, see it radiating outward, touching the people and places you will meet tomorrow. This light is your intention, your visualization of calm, compassion, and presence. Carry it into your dreams and let it carry you into your waking day. There comes a time in every life when the heart grows weary from pushing against what cannot be moved, when the mind grows restless from trying to control the winds of circumstance, and when the spirit aches from the endless habit of saying, "This should not be so." It is in those moments that the teaching of acceptance arises like a lantern in the dark, not as resignation, not as surrender to despair, but as a quiet turning toward the truth. That this moment, however imperfect, is part of the path. The Buddha spoke plainly. Suffering begins when we resist what is. To accept does not mean to love pain, nor does it mean to deny injustice, but it does mean to release the constant inner war against reality, the war that drains us before a single step has even been taken. If you pause and breathe deeply now, perhaps you will notice how often the mind whispers complaints against the weather, against the traffic, against your own body, against the actions of others, against the weight of your past. Each complaint is like a stone placed in your pocket, heavy and unnoticed until the day feels unbearable. Yet each acceptance is like setting down a stone by the side of the road, leaving your hands free to reach for something lighter. It is not what happens that truly exhausts us. It is the story of resistance we tell ourselves, the belief that life owes us something different than what is here. Imagine for a moment standing at the edge of a river. The water flows swiftly, carrying branches, leaves, and even debris from storms upstream. You can fight the current, thrash against it, demand that the river runs slower or clearer, but you will only tire, and the river will continue indifferent to your struggle. Or you can choose to float, to let the current carry you, to trust that its destination is the ocean, even if you cannot yet see it. Acceptance is not passive. It is the active choice to float, to breathe, to trust. It is the quiet strength of yielding without breaking. Epictetus, the Stoic sage, would remind his students that the obstacle is the way, that what seems to block the path becomes the path itself. The Buddha taught the same truth with other words: the lotus grows only in the mud. Without the resistance of mud, there can be no blossom. Without the friction of life's difficulties, there can be no deepening of compassion, no awakening of resilience. And so when difficulty arises, the practice is not to cry out, "Why me?" but to whisper instead, "This too belongs." Not because suffering is glorious, but because it is real, and to deny it is to deny life itself. There is a small parable often told in Buddhist circles. A farmer once lamented to the Buddha that his life was too full of problems. His crops were failing, his wife misunderstood him, his children ignored him, his neighbors gossiped about him. "Please, Master, help me rid myself of these problems." The Buddha smiled gently and said, "I cannot help you with that. Everyone has 83 problems. Some change, some stay. Perhaps when one disappears, another will arise. But I can help you with the 84th problem." "What is the 84th problem?" the farmer asked. "The thought that you should not have problems at all. To see this truth is to lay down a great burden. The acceptance that life will always carry its share of imperfections allows you to breathe more freely, to stop adding suffering to suffering. Acceptance is not weakness. It is strength of the deepest kind. It takes courage to stop fighting reality, to release the clenched fist of control, and to stand instead with open hands, saying, "I am here with what is." In that openness, energy is no longer wasted. and what is needed can finally be done with clarity. Complaining blinds us, while acceptance clears the eyes. When you stop saying this should not be, you can finally ask, what can I do now with love, with wisdom? Tonight, as you lie down to rest, you can practice this acceptance in the simplest of ways. Notice the breath as it moves in and out, perhaps not as deep as you would like, perhaps a little shallow, perhaps uneven, yet it is still here sustaining you. Whisper inwardly, this is enough. Notice your body, perhaps tired, perhaps aching, perhaps restless, yet still alive, still carrying you. Whisper again, this too is part of the path. And when memories or regrets rise up, instead of pushing them away, bow to them lightly and say, you are also part of me, and I will not fight you. In that soft bow, a strange and healing peace begins to take root. The science of the mind now confirms what ancient sages have always known. Those who complain constantly drain their energy, weaken their immunity, and even diminish their sleep. But those who practice acceptance, who consciously breathe and soften into the present, live longer, rest deeper, and find joy even in simple moments. Acceptance is medicine invisible and free, available in every breath. There is another story from Zen of a monk who carried water from the well each day in 2 buckets. One bucket was cracked, and so half the water was lost along the path. The monk never complained, never tried to replace it, but carried both day after day. After many months, the cracked bucket finally spoke, ashamed of its flaw. I am sorry, it said, I have wasted your effort. I am broken. The monk smiled and pointed to the side of the path where the cracked bucket always dripped. There flowers had sprung up, nourished by the lost water, lining the path with beauty. Do you see, the monk said, it is because of your crack that this path is filled with blossoms. Acceptance is not merely tolerating what is broken, it is seeing the hidden blossoms that only brokenness can bring. So let this be your practice. When something unwanted arrives, a delay, a disappointment, a loss, breathe and remind yourself, this also belongs. This too is part of the way. Not as a resignation, but as a reclamation of peace. In that acceptance, you free yourself from the exhausting struggle against life, and you discover the calm strength that has always been waiting beneath the noise of resistance. There is a tender secret that the heart often forgets, a truth so simple and yet so elusive that it hides in plain sight, waiting to be rediscovered each time we return to the present moment. It is this right here, right now. Nothing essential is missing. The mind, in its endless hunger, invents stories of lack, weaving together what is absent, what is not yet attained, what might be lost tomorrow. And in this restless narrative, we come to believe that we are incomplete. Yet if you pause, if you breathe deeply, and let your attention rest gently on this very instant, you will notice that beneath the noise of craving, there is a quiet wholeness, an undisturbed sufficiency, a simple contentment that requires nothing extra to be real. The Buddha called this state santuti, the joy of contentment which does not depend on wealth or praise or the fleeting approval of others, but rests instead upon the recognition that the miracle of life is already here. The Stoics too spoke of contentus, not as resignation or denial of aspiration, but as the noble strength of finding stability within, regardless of what fortune brings. The modern world teaches us to chase more, to equate satisfaction with accumulation. But the old sages whisper another way, to awaken to the fact that in this moment, with this breath, with this body, and this awareness, you already hold what you most deeply need. Imagine yourself sitting quietly in a room, perhaps with nothing more than a chair, a cup of tea, and a patch of sunlight falling across the floor. The restless mind may begin its litany. There should be more comfort, more success, more recognition, more possessions. But if you soften those thoughts and simply feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, the gentle taste of tea on your tongue, the rhythm of breath moving in and out, you may discover that peace does not require anything else to arrive. Peace is not given by what is added. It is revealed when nothing more is needed. There is a Zen saying, "When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you." This does not mean ownership in the material sense. It means belonging in the spiritual sense, the recognition that you are not estranged from life, not an outsider waiting to be admitted, but already a child of this universe, already home in its vastness. To live in contentment is to walk the earth with lightness, no longer dragging the chains of not enough, but instead touching each moment as if it were a treasure beyond measure. Science, too, has begun to echo what the sages have long known. Studies reveal that those who cultivate gratitude and contentment experience lower anxiety, deeper sleep, stronger resilience in the face of stress. The nervous system softens when it no longer feels the constant whip of insufficiency, and the body heals more readily when it is bathed in the chemistry of calm acceptance. Yet this is not a passive state. It is a skill, a practice, a training of the mind, to return again and again to the present, to whisper softly, "For this breath, for this life, I am enough." Let me tell you a story. Once there was a monk who spent years searching for enlightenment. He traveled to distant temples, studied with learned masters, practiced austerities until his body grew thin, but peace always seemed just beyond reach. One evening, exhausted, he sat beneath a tree, too tired to strive anymore, and he simply watched the moon rise over the mountains. The air was cool, the crickets sang, his breath slowed, and in that simple moment he felt a profound joy, unlike any he had known. Tears filled his eyes as he realized that the enlightenment he had chased across miles and decades had always been hidden in the ordinariness of the present. He laughed softly and whispered, "How foolish I have been. All along, I was already home." You too may be carrying the weight of endless, striving the belief that happiness is somewhere in the next achievement, the next possession, the next recognition. But happiness, like a shy bird, does not come when chased. It settles quietly when the world grows still. Tonight, as you lie upon your bed, feel the sheets against your skin, hear the quiet hum of the room, notice the rise and fall of your breath, and let yourself rest in the realization that this moment is complete. You do not need to solve tomorrow to rest tonight. You do not need to become more to be whole in this breath. Contentment does not mean abandoning dreams or denying the call to growth. It means that growth arises not from desperation but from a place of peace. When you are content, your actions are not fueled by the fear of lack, but by the joy of creation. You plant seeds not to fill a void, but to celebrate the fullness already within. In this way, contentment and aspiration are not enemies, they are companions. Contentment says, "I am whole now." Aspiration says, "And because I am whole, I may freely become more." Perhaps you can try a simple exercise. Several times a day, pause wherever you are. Breathe deeply and say inwardly, "In this moment, I lack nothing." Repeat it without exaggeration, without drama, simply as a recognition of truth. Feel the way your shoulders soften, the way your heart eases, the way your mind quiets, when you remember that life is already enough. This is not denial of difficulty, but an antidote to the poison of endless wanting. And each time you practice the roots of contentment, grow deeper until they become the ground upon which your whole life rests. Rumi once wrote, "Be like a tree and let the dead leaves drop." Contentment is like that, letting go of what you think you need, letting go of the belief that joy is elsewhere, letting the leaves of craving fall so that new life can emerge from the branches of your soul. When you let go, you do not become poorer. You discover you are already rich, rich in breath, rich in awareness, rich in the sacred ordinariness of being alive. So, as you drift towards sleep tonight, cradle yourself in this truth. In this moment you are complete. Your heart is still beating, your lungs are still breathing, your mind is still awake to the mystery of existence. You need nothing more to be whole. Rest in that wholeness. Let it seep into your dreams, so that when you awaken tomorrow, you may carry it with you, like a lantern lighting the path through all the noise and clamor of the world. And, whenever the mind begins again, its old litany of lack, return to the lantern, return to the breath, return to the whisper that says, "I am already enough." As night settles across the sky and the earth grows quiet beneath its soft blanket of stars, there comes a moment of profound invitation, a moment when the day itself bends low and whispers, "Before you lay me down, see me clearly." It is the practice of closing the day, not with judgment, not with harshness, but with the gentle gaze of wisdom, the soft embrace of reflection. The Stoic philosophers spoke often of this practice, how at night they would review the hours that had passed, not as a cruel interrogation, but as a teacher, patiently reviewing lessons with a student. The Buddha, too, encouraged his disciples to reflect each evening, not to cling to regrets, but to release them, not to boast in victories, but to recognize them with humility. Both paths converge upon the same truth, that when the day is consciously closed, the heart finds rest more easily, and the mind prepares itself for a deeper sleep free of the knots of unfinished thought. Imagine yourself now lying in bed, the room dim, and still the sounds of the world reduced to a soft murmur. In this quiet, rather than letting the mind wander in circles of worry or regret, you may take the day gently in your hands as one might hold a fragile flower at the end of its bloom. Look at it tenderly. Ask yourself, what did I learn today? What softened me? What hardened me? What opened my heart? What closed it? Do not demand dramatic answers. Often, the lessons are subtle. A moment of patience, when you could have snapped a smile you gave to a stranger, a hesitation where fear held you back, a tear that revealed what you truly value. Each of these moments is a pearl strung along the necklace of your becoming. To see them is to honor them, and in that honoring, the restless energy of the day begins to dissolve. The practice is not about perfection, for perfection is a phantom that exhausts the seeker. The practice is about integration, about gathering the scattered fragments of your experience so that they do not whirl chaotically in the mind as you attempt to rest. It is like a shepherd who calls the sheep back into the pen at evening, not to scold them for where they wandered, but to know that all have returned safe and whole. When you review the day, you are calling back the scattered sheep of your attention, guiding them gently into the quiet meadow of presence. There is a teaching in Zen about polishing the mirror. Each night, the mirror of the mind gathers dust, the dust of irritation, the dust of disappointment, the dust of pride. If you do not wipe it gently, the dust accumulates, and soon you cannot see your reflection clearly. But if you take even a few moments to polish the mirror each evening, to notice what has been written upon the surface of your heart, then the next morning you awaken with clarity, with lightness, with readiness. This is why the masters would close their eyes before sleep and silently ask, "What remains unfinished? What can I release?" And as the answers arose, they would let them drift away like leaves carried off by the stream. Perhaps tonight you might try this sacred pause yourself. Before letting sleep take you, breathe slowly, and with each breath allow the body to grow heavier, the thoughts to grow lighter. Then, as if watching a gentle film, replay the day in your mind. Do not cling to each scene, but let them flow past. See where kindness arose and smile softly to yourself. See where impatience flared, and whisper with compassion, "Ah, here is my humanity." See where courage was present, and give thanks. See where fear whispered, and bow to its presence without shame. And as the final frames pass before your inner eye, place the entire day in an imagined basket and set it down beside your bed, saying inwardly, "You may rest now. I may rest now." Science has shown that such rituals are powerful, not only for the mind, but for the body. When we review the day with compassion rather than rumination, the nervous system settles, cortisol levels decline, and the brain prepares for the deep cycles of restorative sleep. In contrast, when we carry unresolved worries, the mind spins endlessly, the body tenses, and rest eludes us. What the ancients intuited through practice, modern research confirms: reflection is not indulgence, it is medicine. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition about a monk who, before retiring each night, would light a small candle and place it on his windowsill. He would sit beside it and silently recall the events of the day. Each joy was honored like incense rising to the heavens. Each mistake was acknowledged like ash falling gently to the earth. And when his heart felt at peace with both, he would extinguish the flame, saying, "As this day ends, may all beings rest. As this flame is blown out, may all sorrows dissolve." Those who lived near him said that his small room seemed to glow with unusual peace, and they would sometimes gather outside just to feel the quiet radiance of his ritual. Closing the day is not about self-recrimination, it is about returning home. It is about remembering that each day is a teacher, each hour a lesson, each encounter a mirror. It is about recognizing that even when you stumble, you are still walking the path, and even when you fall, you are still carried by the current of Dharma. Reflection transforms regret into wisdom, mistakes into stepping stones, victories into humble gratitude. Without it, we carry the weight of yesterday into tomorrow, layering burden upon burden. With it, we travel light-free to begin again with clear eyes and an open heart. And so, as you drift now towards sleep, do not simply let the day collapse behind you like a door slammed shut. Instead, close it gently like a book placed lovingly upon the shelf. Whisper to yourself, "Today was enough. I did what I could. I learned what I learned. I release the rest." Feel how the body responds to those words, how the shoulders soften, how the chest expands with relief, how the mind sighs with gratitude. Let that relief carry you into dreams where even the night becomes a teacher, showing you hidden truths in the language of symbols and silence. When morning comes, you will awaken lighter, clearer, more whole, for the day you set down with reverence will not haunt you. Instead, it will have given you its gifts, and you will rise to meet a new day, not as someone burdened by yesterday's weight, but as someone ready to begin anew. This is the power of closing the day with wisdom, a ritual both ancient and eternal, waiting quietly each evening for you to remember. In the mountains of the east, where the winds speak through pine trees and the night sky holds an endless sea of stars, there is a story told of a monk who carried not a modern lantern of glass and oil, but a small flame held carefully within a vessel. For years, the younger monks would laugh at him, mocking the simplicity of his light, asking why he did not adopt the brighter lamps or the more practical tools of the day. They would shake their heads, amused that he insisted on tending such a fragile fire, one that demanded constant attention, one that seemed in their eyes unnecessary, in a world that had already invented more convenient forms of light. Yet the monk never argued, never explained himself, never defended his choice. He simply walked quietly, step after step, carrying his little flame wherever he went. One night, a storm came roaring down from the mountains. The sky blackened, lightning split the heavens, rain poured with such force that even the strongest roofs trembled. The entire monastery was plunged into darkness. As the lamps failed, the wires snapped, the modern conveniences suddenly revealed for what they were: impermanent, unreliable, as fleeting as the storm itself. Panic rose among the monks. They stumbled through the dark halls, hearts pounding, unsure of how to find their way. And then through the torrent, a glow appeared, soft but steady, flickering but unyielding. It was the little flame sheltered carefully in the monk's lantern, shining through the storm. The others gathered around him, their fear dissolving as the small flame lit their path. Only then did they ask with sincerity, rather than mockery, "Why do you always carry this old flame?" And the monk, after years of silence, finally spoke, "Because the outer lights may fail, but the flame you tend within will never leave you." In that moment, they understood that he had not been foolish but wise, for, while they had trusted the world's brightness, he had cultivated the fire that no storm could extinguish. This story is more than a fable. It is a mirror of our own lives. We live surrounded by external lights, wealth, recognition, approval, possessions, distractions. They illuminate our path for a while. But when storms come, and storms always come, those lights falter. A job may be lost. A relationship may end. The body may grow frail. The plans we built so carefully may collapse in a single gust of fate. If we have depended solely on these outer lamps, we are left in darkness. But if we have tended the inner flame, the quiet fire of awareness, of presence, of equanimity, then even when the outer world goes black, we still carry a light that guides us home. The Buddha taught that this inner flame is the refuge that no one can give or take away. He called it Attadipa Viharatha, be a lamp unto yourself. These words were his final instructions, spoken with love to his disciples as he prepared to leave the body behind. He did not tell them to cling to his form or his authority, but to trust the lamp they could kindle in their own hearts, the lamp of mindfulness and compassion. To walk with such a lamp is to carry an unbreakable source of peace, a fire that glows quietly, even when life's storms howl with ferocity. Think of your own life. How often do you chase the outer lamps, believing they will keep you safe? Perhaps you rely on the praise of others, and when it vanishes, you feel lost. Perhaps you depend on material comfort, and when it wavers, you feel unmoored. Perhaps you cling to control, and when events escape you, despair floods in. These are the fragile lights, the lamps of the world, beautiful while they last, but destined to fade. The practice is to tend instead the inner flame through daily awareness, through gratitude, through compassion, so that when the storm arrives, you are not left in darkness. Let us pause together in reflection. Imagine within your chest a small flame no larger than a candle, flickering softly. Each breath you take feeds it gently. Each act of kindness makes it glow brighter. Each moment of mindfulness steadies its dance. This flame does not roar like a bonfire, does not blind with its brilliance, but its warmth is steady, its light unwavering. It is your companion in solitude, your guide in confusion, your comfort in sorrow. When you close your eyes at night, it remains. When you awaken in uncertainty, it is there. And when all else fades, it continues, reminding you that peace is not outside but within. There is a Zen master who once said, "Do not chase the moon's reflection on the water. Drink instead from the spring that lies beneath." The outer world is full of reflections, shimmering images that dazzle us for a while but disappear when the wind shifts. The inner flame is the spring itself, flowing quietly, unending, untouched by the weather of circumstance. To discover it is to discover the only true security, the knowledge that you already carry all that you need. In the stillness of this moment, as you listen and breathe, consider what it means to tend your flame. Perhaps it means pausing in the morning to breathe before the rush begins, offering gratitude, not for what might come, but for what already is. Perhaps it means choosing kindness in a moment of irritation, knowing that every act of compassion feeds the fire. Perhaps it means sitting in silence, not filling the air with words, allowing space for the flame to be felt. Each of these small gestures is like placing a hand around the lantern, protecting the light from the wind, ensuring it continues to shine. And when the storms do arrive, as they inevitably will, you may feel fear, you may feel sorrow, but you will not be lost. For in the depths of your being, the flame will glow, whispering, "I am here. I will guide you." The outer lights may shatter, but the inner flame once tended cannot be extinguished. It is eternal, not in duration but in essence, for it is the very light of awareness itself, the luminous presence that is your truest self. So tonight, as you prepare to surrender to sleep, see yourself walking with that monk through the darkened monastery. See the flame flickering in his lantern, steady despite the storm. Feel that flame mirrored in your own heart, a twin light glowing in the stillness of your chest. Trust that as you rest, the flame will keep watch, holding the darkness at bay, guiding you gently through the landscapes of your dreams. And when you awaken, you will rise, not with fear, but with a quiet strength, carrying your lantern into the new day, ready to shine not only for yourself, but for all those still stumbling in the dark. When we look back upon the journey of these habits, they may at first appear as 10 separate stones laid upon the path, each one distinct, each one carrying its own wisdom and form. Yet as we step slowly, mindfully across them, we begin to see that they are not isolated, but interwoven, that each practice leads naturally into the next, forming not a straight road, but a circle, a mandala of living peace, where all parts are connected and every teaching returns us gently to the heart. Like beads strung upon a mala, each habit shines with its own light, but together they create a rhythm, a current of remembrance that guides us not just through one day, but through the fabric of our lives. The first breath of the morning, when you open your eyes and whisper to yourself, "I am alive," becomes the seed of presence, and from that seed grows the gratitude that colors your thoughts as you wash your face, as you brush your teeth, as you look upon the small gifts already around you. That gratitude naturally flows into the way you walk, into the way your feet touch the earth in silence, carrying not haste, but reverence. The body follows the mind, and the mind follows the body. So when emotions arise like storms, you meet them with the body's wisdom, with breath, with grounding, with tenderness instead of analysis. Slowly, the practices weave together, each one strengthening the other, until the whole day feels less like a battlefield and more like a river flowing at its natural pace. When you pause in the middle of the day, stopping for just 30 seconds to notice where you are, how you breathe, what you feel in the chest, you are no longer running blind but stepping into awareness. When you offer compassion silently, wishing strangers peace as you pass them, you turn ordinary streets into temples, you turn ordinary encounters into blessings. When you honor silence, deliberately carving out moments to sit without noise, without stimulation, you invite your soul to breathe again, reminding yourself that peace is not hidden, it is merely drowned out by too much clamor. And when challenges arise, when someone provokes you, when comparison tempts you, when envy whispers in your ear, you respond not with blind reaction, but with space, with pause, with the quiet authority of a heart that knows freedom comes not from controlling the world, but from mastering its own impulses. Do you see how each habit feeds the next reflection at night? Reviewing the day without harshness allows you to plant better seeds for the morning to come. Visualizing strength and calm before challenges makes it easier to accept what is rather than resisting life's unfolding. Contentment, that steady recognition that in this moment nothing essential is missing, supports gratitude, which supports presence, which supports compassion, until all the practices form a circle, endlessly reinforcing one another. It is not about doing everything perfectly, but about remembering that every moment offers one entry point, one opening into the circle of peace. The Buddha often spoke of the Eightfold Path, a circle of practices that, when lived together, bring liberation. The habits we have walked through echo this wisdom. They are not rigid rules, but living reminders, modern expressions of timeless truths. Gratitude is right view, seeing clearly that life already contains blessings. Compassion is right action, choosing kindness, even in silence. Reflection is right mindfulness, attending to each moment without losing yourself in its shadows. In this way, the circle is not foreign. It is simply another doorway into what the Dharma has always pointed toward. A Zen master once compared practice to a garden. You may water one flower today, another tomorrow, and slowly the entire field comes alive. If you miss a day, the garden does not collapse. It simply waits patient for your return. In the same way, the circle of peace waits patiently for you. Perhaps today you remember to pause before reacting but forget to express gratitude. Perhaps tomorrow you practice compassion but forget to review your day at night. Still, the circle remains whole and unbroken, and you may step back into it at any time. It is not about perfection, but about continuity, about gently returning again and again, until the habits become not separate tasks, but the natural rhythm of your living. Pause now, dear listener, and reflect which of these practices has already taken root within you, which one calls to you most strongly. There is no need to master them all at once. Begin with one, tend it carefully, and watch as it leads you naturally into the others. For when you strengthen presence, gratitude arises. When gratitude blooms, compassion follows. When compassion deepens, silence is welcomed. When silence expands, clarity emerges. And when clarity is present, reflection becomes natural. In this way, the circle spins endlessly, carrying you gently toward a life of inner steadiness. Science affirms what the ancients knew. Habits are not isolated behaviors, but networks that reinforce each other. A single mindful breath can calm the nervous system, which in turn opens space for compassion, which then enriches social bonds, which then deepens gratitude, which improves sleep, which strengthens resilience, and the cycle continues. The old masters did not need laboratories to prove this. They saw it in their lives, and they passed it on to us like torches lit in the darkness. Today, neuroscience places language upon it, but the flame is the same. Peace is not accidental, but cultivated, not given by the world, but grown within the self. There is a story of a disciple who asked his master, "Which practice should I choose? There are so many: meditation, chanting, gratitude, reflection, compassion. How do I know which is best?" The master smiled and placed a cup of water in front of Prota. Him. "Whichever you drink," he said, "the thirst will be quenched." The disciple frowned, not fully understanding. The master continued, "All the rivers lead to the same ocean. Choose one, drink deeply, and you will find the source that nourishes them all." So it is with these habits. You need not grasp them all at once. Choose one river and walk beside it. With time you will find yourself at the ocean, where all waters meet, and there you will see that gratitude, presence, compassion, silence, reflection, they are not separate streams but one vast sea of awareness. And, as you rest tonight, feel this circle holding you. Imagine 10 lights arranged in a ring around your heart, each one glowing softly, each one representing one of the habits you have heard. As you breathe in, the lights brighten. As you breathe out, they soften, creating a rhythm, like the rhythm of waves against the shore. You are surrounded by this circle of light, protected, nourished, held. Trust that even if you practice imperfectly, even if you forget, the circle remains ready to welcome you back each time you remember. Life will not stop being life. Storms will come, losses will occur, the body will age, challenges will rise. But within the circle of peace you walk differently. You walk not as one constantly pushed and pulled by circumstance, but as one who carries a lamp within, as one who trusts the rhythm of practice, as one who knows that happiness is not a distant prize, but the very way of walking here and now. There is a gentle truth that reveals itself when we live these practices day after day, and it is this: the path of peace is not a straight line, nor is it an accomplishment that once gained never slips away. It is more like the tide of the ocean flowing forward and then retreating, surging with clarity and then ebbing into forgetfulness, yet always returning, always steady in its rhythm, even when we are too distracted to notice. We imagine sometimes that wisdom should be permanent, that once we taste stillness, we should never feel agitation again, that once we awaken to gratitude, we should never fall into complaint, that once we learn compassion, we should never feel anger or envy. But this is not the way of human life, for even the most devoted monk forgets. Even the most mindful teacher becomes lost in thought. Even the great masters speak of moments when old habits return. The difference is not that the awakened never forget, but that they remember more quickly and they return without self-condemnation. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, return to yourself again and again as a man who is wandering finds his way home. And the Buddha too spoke of this when he encouraged his disciples to practice mindfulness, not as a rigid expectation, but as a gentle returning, a remembering of presence each time the mind drifts away. The forgetting is not failure, it is part of the rhythm. The practice is simply to notice when you are lost and to come back as softly as a mother lifting a child who has stumbled and setting him once again upon his feet. Think of it like the breath. You do not take one breath and declare it enough for the rest of your life. You breathe again and again, each inhalation sustaining you, each exhalation releasing, and in this endless cycle you are kept alive. In the same way, mindfulness is not something you achieve once and carry forever. It is something you renew with each moment, each pause, each act of remembrance. And just as no one scolds themselves for needing to breathe again, so too there is no need to scold yourself for forgetting. The forgetting is natural. The remembering is the gift. A Zen koan tells of a monk who asked his master, "What do you do when you lose your way?" The master replied, "I return." The monk pressed, "But what if you lose your way again?" The master answered, "I return again." Still dissatisfied, the monk asked, "And what if this happens 1,000 times?" The master smiled and said, "Then I return 1,000 times." This is the essence of practice, not perfection but persistence, not grasping for an unbroken record of presence, but cultivating the resilience to return, no matter how often you wander. In your own life, you may notice that you practice gratitude one morning, and by afternoon you are caught in irritation. You may sit in silence one evening, and the next day you are swept into noise. You may promise yourself compassion, and then find judgment rising before you can stop it. This is not evidence that you are failing. It is evidence that you are alive, that your mind is moving as all minds do, like clouds across the sky. What matters is not the drifting of the clouds, but your willingness to look up, to notice, and to remember the vastness of the sky behind them. Each time you remember, you strengthen the habit of returning, and little by little the returns grow easier, more natural, until they are as instinctive as breathing. Science speaks of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself with repeated practice. Each time you remember, each time you pause and return to presence, you are strengthening those pathways. You are carving a channel through which calm can flow more freely. Forgetting does not erase your practice. Forgetting is simply the moment before remembering, and remembering is what waters the seeds of peace. Just as a river deepens its bed, not by flowing perfectly straight, but by winding back and forth, so too your practice deepens by the rhythm of forgetting and returning, forgetting and returning until the channel of peace is carved deep and sure within you. There is a tenderness in this way of seeing, a compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. For how often do we burden ourselves with expectations, demanding perfection, demanding constancy, as though we were machines and not living beings? The Buddha often reminded his disciples of metta-loving kindness, not as something offered only outward, but as something extended inward to the fragile, forgetful human self that tries and fails and tries again. To walk the path is to walk with patience, to remember that practice is not measured in how rarely you fall, but in how gently you rise each time you do. Pause now and breathe into this truth. Remember a moment today when you forgot, when you reacted, when you compared, when you judged. Instead of scolding yourself, smile gently, as though you are smiling at a child who is learning to walk. Whisper softly in your mind, "Yes, I forgot. And now I return." Feel how even this simple act of forgiveness lights a candle within, turning the burden of guilt into the warmth of renewed intention. A story from the Pali Canon tells of a monk who fell into despair because he could not maintain perfect mindfulness. He approached the Buddha, confessing his failure, expecting rebuke. Instead, the Buddha asked him, "Did you notice that you had wandered?" The monk said yes. The Buddha smiled and said, "Then you are already on the path, for one who is lost and does not know he is lost is truly far away, but one who notices and returns is already practicing rightly." And in hearing this, the monk's despair lifted, for he understood that noticing the forgetting was itself part of the remembering. So, do not be harsh with yourself. Do not demand that the lamp within you burn without flicker. Simply tend it day after day, and when it falters, tend it again. Each time you do, the flame steadies, and over years of practice you discover that the forgetting itself becomes shorter, the returning swifter, the compassion deeper. You learn to walk through life not with the brittle perfection of glass, but with the supple strength of bamboo, bending with the winds, yet never breaking. And as you rest now, feel yourself within this rhythm, like waves upon the shore. With each breath in, you remember. With each breath out, you release the forgetting. The tide flows forward, the tide flows back, and yet the ocean remains vast and unbroken. So too is your practice, rising and falling, forgetting and remembering, yet always within the embrace of the greater truth that you are held, that you are guided, that you are never truly lost. There comes a moment in the long unfolding of practice when you begin to see that these teachings are not fragments, not exercises to be checked off, but threads in a vast tapestry that slowly weaves itself into the fabric of your being. And when you look closely, you notice that what once felt like effort is becoming natural. What once felt like a deliberate discipline is becoming the rhythm of your life. Like the way seasons move without being forced, or the way dawn arrives without needing to be summoned. You realize that the circle of habits is not something outside of you, imposed from beyond, but something within you, emerging from the deepest layers of your own longing for freedom, your own yearning to be at peace with yourself and with the world. Living with purpose, with gratitude, and with silence is not about arranging your days to appear serene to others. It is about aligning your heart so that even in the midst of noise you carry quietness, even in the midst of difficulty you carry gratitude, and even in the face of uncertainty you carry a sense of direction that is not rigid, but alive, not fixed, but flowing. Purpose in the Buddhist sense is not a heavy destiny or a burden of accomplishment. It is the gentle recognition that you are here alive in this very moment, capable of contributing to life through the sincerity of your presence. Gratitude in the Buddhist sense is not the performance of thankfulness, but the actual seeing with fresh eyes that life is already abundant in ways we usually overlook. Silence in the Buddhist sense is not the absence of sound, but the fullness of being the space where the heart listens and the soul breathes. Imagine yourself in the midst of a day, walking down a busy street where cars rush and voices rise. Yet within you there is a river of stillness. You are not resisting the noise, not struggling against it, but simply carrying your own quiet lamp. And because of that, the noise does not wound you. This is what it means to live with silence, not to flee the world, but to bring into it a stillness so steady that it cannot be shaken. Imagine yourself at the end of a long day reflecting not on what you lacked or what you failed to achieve, but on the countless small gifts that held you: the smile of a stranger, the softness of the evening light, the rhythm of your breath. And in that moment, gratitude is no longer a task, but a way of seeing. Imagine yourself beginning the morning, not with a desperate list of tasks, but with a simple intention whispered inwardly. Today, I will walk with awareness. I will meet what comes with compassion. I will return to myself again and again. That is living with purpose, not chasing after a grand design, but dwelling in the truth that each step, each breath, each word can embody the Dharma. The Stoics, too, spoke of living according to nature, of aligning oneself with the great order of the cosmos, and the Buddha's voice echoes through that vision, reminding us that to live in accordance with Dharma is to live in harmony with reality, as it is not as we wish it to be. Purpose, gratitude, and silence are not three separate practices, but three expressions of that harmony, three doorways into the same home. Step through any of them, and you will find yourself resting where you always long to rest, in the ease of your own being. There is a parable told in Zen about a master who carried water each morning from the river to the monastery in 2 buckets. One bucket was perfect and never spilled a drop, while the other had a small crack and leaked as he walked. The perfect bucket grew proud and mocked the cracked one for its imperfection. But after many months, the cracked bucket noticed that along the path it traveled, flowers had begun to bloom where the water had dripped. The master smiled at the bucket and said, "You thought yourself broken, but you were watering the world with each step." This story reminds us that living with purpose does not mean erasing our flaws or becoming untouchably strong. It means recognizing that even in our imperfections, even in our forgetfulness, we can be of service, we can bring beauty, we can water the seeds of life around us. In this way, the circle of habits becomes less about striving and more about trust. You trust that gratitude is enough to light the darkness. You trust that silence is enough to heal the noise. You trust that purpose is not something you must invent, but something that reveals itself as you keep returning to the present moment. You trust that your cracked places are not failures but openings through which love can flow. And the more you trust, the more you live with ease, until peace no longer feels like a prize you are chasing, but the natural fragrance of the life you are already living. Reflect for a moment now. How would your days shift if, instead of measuring success by what you accomplish, you measured it by how present you were? How would your nights feel if, instead of reviewing what went wrong, you reviewed what bloomed, however small? How would your relationships change if, instead of offering the noise of reaction, you offered the silence of listening? These are not questions to answer with words, but with the way you live, with the way you step into tomorrow, with the way you hold yourself when the winds of the world blow cold. Science tells us that when gratitude is practiced daily, levels of cortisol fall, stress diminishes, and sleep deepens. Neuroscience shows that when silence is cultivated, the nervous system repairs itself more effectively than when bombarded by constant stimulation. Psychology affirms that when life is lived with a sense of purpose, however, simple resilience increases and depression lessens. Yet the Dharma does not need such studies to prove what has been known for centuries, that gratitude, silence and purpose are not luxuries, but necessities, not decorations for a peaceful life, but the very foundation of it. There is another story, this one from the Sufi mystic Rumi, who spoke of a man who searched desperately for treasure. He dug in many places, restless, never satisfied, always convinced that the real gold lay somewhere else. Finally exhausted, he sat in silence upon the ground, and in that silence he felt the earth beneath him pulse with life. And he realized the treasure was not hidden far away, but beneath his very feet, waiting for him to stop seeking. Elsewhere, so it is with us. We chase peace in possessions, in recognition, in control. But the treasure is here beneath us, within us, revealed, when we live with presence, gratitude, and silence. And as you listen now, let your body soften. Let your breath lengthen. Feel the circle of these habits surrounding you, not as commands but as companions, not as rules but as reminders, whispering to you, like old friends, be present, be grateful, be compassionate, be still, be forgiving, be free. Let them wash over you like waves, one after another, until you no longer distinguish where one ends and another begins, until you feel yourself not practicing them, but being them, not forcing but flowing, not striving but simply living as one who is whole, one who is complete, one who is at peace. There is a moment at the end of any true journey when you pause, not because the path has ended, but because you recognize that what you have been walking toward has always been with you, silent and waiting like a hidden lamp glowing deep within your chest. You have traveled through reflections on waking with attention, on walking with presence, on carrying gratitude and compassion, on softening your reactions and embracing acceptance. And though the path has seemed long, you now see that each step has simply been a way of returning again and again to the home of your own being. The ancient voices of the Buddha, of the Stoics, of the mystics have guided you not toward something foreign, but toward what was always yours, to reclaim the quiet radiance of peace that is not earned, not borrowed, not dependent on anything outside of you. Remember the story told earlier of the monk who carried the small flame in his lantern while others laughed, choosing modern light over fire. They mocked him until the storm came, until the power failed, until darkness swallowed the temple, and then it was his small flame, steady and humble, that led them through. That story is your story, for within you burns that same flame, and while the world offers countless artificial lights, dazzling and fleeting, they fail in the storms of life, while the fire you tend within cannot be extinguished. To live these teachings is to nurture that inner flame with every act of mindfulness, every moment of gratitude, every choice to pause and return rather than react and scatter. And slowly, without realizing, you become like the monk carrying your light, not to show off, not to convince, but to quietly illumine the path when others are lost. In the silence of night, when worries gather and regrets whisper, when the mind replays scenes of the past or rehearses fears of the future, it is this flame you turn to. You close your eyes, breathe slowly, and remember, I am alive. I am here. I am enough. And in that remembering, the flame steadies. Gratitude arises like a gentle wind fanning. The ember compassion deepens like the oil that keeps it burning. Silence surrounds it like the lantern that protects it, and purpose directs its glow toward the path ahead. In this way, the practices you have walked are not separate rituals, but the tending of a single fire, the sacred work of keeping your light alive in a world that often forgets its own. As you rest now, reflect on the countless times you have returned, each breath a return, each pause a return, each act of noticing a return. And realize that in those small acts, you have been training your soul to come home, training your heart to choose peace again and again. There is no final perfection to achieve, no flawless state of mind, to maintain only this continual flow, this gentle rhythm of forgetting and remembering, of stumbling and rising, of being lost, and then found within the sanctuary of presence. Even the Buddha spoke of his path as one of practice, not of static arrival, reminding us that enlightenment is not a frozen state, but a living, breathing awareness that must be renewed, like the flame of a lamp each dawn. Perhaps you wonder, will I forget again? Will I be swept into comparison, anger, fear? And the answer is yes, for to be human is to forget. But you will also remember more quickly. You will return with more compassion. You will smile at your forgetfulness as you might smile at a child who has wandered too far. You will remember the cracked bucket watering flowers. You will remember the monk with his flame. You will remember that your life is not meant to be flawless, but fruitful, not meant to be perfectly ordered, but deeply alive. And in that remembering you will know that peace is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of awareness, not the escape from difficulty, but the gentle strength that allows you to walk through it with grace. The Sufi poet Rumi once said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." And in the same way, your forgetfulness is the place where your practice deepens. Your imperfection is the place where compassion is born. Your vulnerability is the place where love flows most freely. To live with peace is not to eliminate the cracks, but to let them be channels for the flame within, to let them glow with the light of presence. The Stoics too reminded us that obstacles are not barriers, but the path itself, and Buddhism echoes this truth, teaching that the very conditions we wish away, pain, uncertainty, impermanence, are the teachers that bring us home. So tonight, as you listen, let yourself release the idea that you must achieve something else before you can rest. You have already walked far enough. You have already returned enough. You have already carried your flame through storms that only you know. Now is the time to rest, to place the lantern beside you and let its glow surround you. Feel the breath softening in your chest. Feel the weight in your body loosening into the earth. Feel the thoughts drifting like leaves upon the surface of a river carried gently away by the current. You are safe, you are whole, you are tended by the same Dharma that moves the stars and the seasons. If you close your eyes now, you may imagine yourself standing in a temple at dusk. The chants have faded, the monks have retired, and you are alone in the hall of silence. Before you on the altar a small flame burns. You bow and realize that the flame is not separate from you. It is your own heart made visible. You breathe, and the flame flickers with your breath. You bow again, and the flame steadies. In that quiet hall, there are no demands, no comparisons, no regrets, only the companionship of your own light, eternal, unshakable, waiting for you to remember it. And when you open your eyes, you carry that image within, knowing you can return to it any time you need, any time the darkness presses close. Life will continue with its noise and its storms, its laughter and its losses, but you will move through it differently now, not seeking peace as something far away, but walking in peace as your natural state. You will wake with gratitude, walk with presence, pause with compassion, listen with silence, and return with forgiveness. And though the world may not notice, though others may continue to rush and compare and worry, your presence will ripple out like the unseen fragrance of a flower, like the warmth of a hidden fire, like the quiet light of a lantern in a storm. As this journey draws to its close, remember the words of the Buddha: peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. You have walked through many teachings, but all of them return here to the simple truth that what you seek has always been within you, waiting for your attention, waiting for your gratitude, waiting for your love. May you carry this truth gently, May you tend your flame with patience. May you return again and again, until returning becomes your way of being. And now let your eyes grow heavy, let your body rest, let your heart soften into the rhythm of the breath. The night holds you, the Dharma carries you, the flame within you burns steady and calm. Rest, dear one, for you are home.